All right, man. Well, let's kick it off. Welcome to the Former Action Guys podcast. You're here.
Huh?
I haven't seen you in forever, dude. It's been a long time. So for the people that are watching this that don't know, you and I served together at 10th Marines. Joshua Gage, will introduce you first. It's Joshua Gage here. He's a JTAC, forward observer, or fire support man, fire support Marine, if you want to be politically correct nowadays.
Yeah.
Fire support man down at 10th Marines. We worked together at the, basically like the ATS, teaching the JTAC, JFO primer. That's where we met and stuff. So, yeah, welcome to the show. Well, let's kick it off by, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and what you... Well, let's start from the beginning. What year did you join the Marine Corps?
Well, first, thanks for having me, man. It's been a hot minute since we've talked.
For sure.
Like you said, yeah, ATS over there teaching. Well, I joined the Marine Corps in 2005. So that's when I actually graduated high school. 2 days later, I shipped out to boot camp.
Would you do that again? Or would you like take some time off and then join?
I'd probably do it again. I was a pretty rebellious, rambunctious kid, so I think some structure, as soon as I had some freedom, really helped me out a lot in life.
Yeah. Now, you're a lat mover too, right?
I am. I'm a dirty lat mover. I'm a mudblood.
Aren't you a Seaburn dude?
No, I was actually comm. I came in on contract. And got stuck in data, actually.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
way off. There's so many lat
gotta-
movers in the 6-1 community, so it's hard to tell sometimes.
There are. And I got exposed to actually the 0861 community by, when I was data, I ran the EPLARs for the forward observers with 312. So that's how I got exposed to the forward observer MLS.
EPLARs, is that the old way to do, like, you could build the network with that thing?
Yeah, it was the location system they used. So.
Oh, okay. I remember one that had a weird keypad on it that, like, you had to plug everything in. One of my radio operators we had no one that knew how to use it, and he, like, figured it out on his own. He just, I don't know, it was super weird, and he became, like, the battalion guy, so they tried to pull him from the FSCC to go around to the battalion when we were on field ops to fix all their I guess it's EPLARs, so. Yeah, so you came in open contract. Why'd you do that?
Well, I originally enlisted to be air crew, but I got a ticket when I was in the DEP. I worked at a gas station, sold a pack of cigarettes to a miner, and my recruiter told me that made me lose my security clearance. The only way I could go in was open contract, and I was like, well, I'll do anything to be a Marine. Yeah. So I came in open contract.
He was probably just like, oh, I need to fill this other spot, so I'm going to lie to this. I'm going to get my seat.
I joined in 05, and my clearance had been adjudicated since 2004. Nice. I found that out later on. So
when I first came in open contract, well, first I didn't want to be open contract. My recruiter told me that infantry was full, and I could do it, but it was going to take some work. And he said I was going to get it. I obviously didn't. But I told him one of the jobs I would do is forward observer. And I think because I had gotten arrested, I'd been arrested twice, actually, before I joined. So luckily, I even was able to join. But yeah, none of the like jobs that they initially had, I don't think any of them could open up for me because of the inability to get a clearance. When I came out of boot camp, they told me I was going to be a geographic intelligence specialist. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And then I like looked it up and I'm like, all right, I'm going to be making maps. I'm going to be doing all this stuff. And then I went to MCT and they're like, no, you're a 3521. You're going to Camp Johnson. I'm like, what? What the fuck? You know, I was super pissed. So what were you hoping for out of your open contract?
Man, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure. I wanted to do something related to aircraft, having originally signed up for aircrew, but apparently I had a good score for the nerdy side of the house, so they made me a network specialist, which I didn't join the Marine Corps to work on computers. I could have done that in the civilian sector, so that's why I looked for a lat move and a combat MLS.
That's actually not a bad job for guys that get it, though, because it does set them up for some, I've heard that they don't let them get some of the qualifications that they used to, or the Marine Corps doesn't really pay for it anymore because they used to do like C++ and all that stuff. Yeah. But it definitely does give a guy, I think, a really good foundation for a job for when they decide to get out. I mean, that's one of those, I tell guys, I'm like, man, you can join, and normally, it's not the rule, but normally, you can either have really cool stories or you can have a job that's going to set you up for like a future job. So it's like, it's like you got to pick and choose which one you want. Now, did you join, did you have any other family in the Marine Corps or the military at all?
So I have a grandfather. He's passed away, but he was actually a Marine back I didn't really know him too well and didn't talk too much about it. And I didn't even find out that he was until after I graduated boot camp. Outside of that, had some other family members in other branches, but I'm the only career Marine, if you will.
Okay. Okay. And what was your like driving decision to join the Marine Corps then?
Well, part of it was, I was from a small town, so there wasn't a whole lot of options. I didn't get good grades in high school because I didn't apply myself.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much just took the test, aced the test, didn't do any homework. So that's how I passed. In the Marine Corps itself, I went in actually to join the Air Force. Like I said, I wanted to be something related to aircraft, and the recruiter was never there. And then one time the Army recruiter grabbed me up, started talking to me about their rotary wing, and then lied to me a few times on getting me to MEPS and this and that. So I went in to tell him to, F himself, that I wasn't joining, and the Marine Corps recruiter came out, snatched me up, and then that was pretty much all they wrote.
And that was history, huh? So are you glad that you ended up with the Marine Corps rather than like the Air Force or something else?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody says like, oh, we're just arrogant because we think we're the best and this and that. But I mean, I believe it. I've been doing it a long time, and it's part of it's a cult. I get it, and arrogance or whatnot. But I think it is one of the difficult branches to get in, and I take pride in the fact that I am a Marine.
That's a common misconception, I think, is that people think that one, that Marines are retarded, and two, that anybody can just do it. And I think the Marine Corps, when I joined in 2006, the only branch that was harder to get into was the Air Force. The Navy and the Army were both pretty straightforward. I mean, you could have a super low ASVAB score and have a lot of stuff wrong to get in the Army and stuff. So like the Marine Corps and the Air Force, I think, were the only two that required a high school graduation. They wouldn't take a GED or anything. And I don't know if they still do that, but I don't necessarily think I don't know if that's the greatest thing, but I think it does separate people because you're dealing with someone that is going to follow through on something. And if you can't follow through on something as easy as high school, then it's like, and I know school's not for everybody and stuff like that, but I don't know. So 2005. So you came in about a year before me. I was in 2006. Did you go? Where are you from originally?
I'm from a small town in north central Arkansas called Yellville.
Yellville?
Yep.
What's the population of Yellville, Arkansas?
Oh, well, last time I checked, it was around 1,100 people, I believe.
Oh, fuck. Big metro there going on.
Yeah, graduating class 67. No stoplights. Biggest thing to hit the town since electricity was the Sonic.
Whoa. Is that the Saturday night hangout? Everybody pulling in at the Sonic.
Yep.
So did you go to Paris Island or San Diego?
I went to San Diego.
That's too bad. So after boot camp, you go to MOS school. You find out you're going to be a data guy. Were you kind of bummed when you found that out?
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what it entailed. I just knew that it involved computers, and prior to that, I had no experience with computers. I didn't even have a computer in my household till I think I was a junior or senior in high school, and that was a gift that my papa had given to my family. And it was a family computer, and I didn't know anything about them. So I was kind of like, well, this is going to be interesting, and I didn't know anything about lat movement at the time, but I knew it's not something I wanted to do as a career in the Marine Corps. I mean, I joined the Marine Corps to fight the enemies of the United States, not type on a computer.
Yeah, it's weird. A lot of people that don't have any kind of military background and stuff don't realize that there's a lot of jobs in the Marine Corps, specifically in the military in general, that don't involve combat. And even during that peak of like Iraq and Afghanistan, I don't think 10% of the Marine Corps specifically saw actual combat. A lot of guys went to combat zones, but most of the time it's like chilling at the Green Bean and stuff like that on Leatherneck or TQ. So it's to get into a job to get into combat, you got to get it, not necessarily, but most likely you got to get into the combat arms job and then be lucky enough, I guess, if you will, to get sent into that place. And then I think a lot of people get sent to combat and then realize it's not as cool as they thought. Like it's exciting and stuff, but it's different, but back to being a data guy, do you think that sets you up, or do you think that or how do you think that helped you just in general now, because it's always good to have a background in like technology and stuff like that.
Well, I think with the technology, it kind of, I guess, piqued my interest in some of the computer side of the house, which, like I said, I had no exposure to. So I got a real quick exposure, pretty advanced. I mean, as advanced as you can get out of MOS school. Mm-hmm. And I think now, especially in today's Marine Corps, it's definitely helped me out because it got that interest in computers, even though I didn't want to do it as my job.
Yeah.
I kept that interest on the personal side. I like game and know how to, crack some code and all that kind of stuff, real basic stuff. But I think in today's Marine Corps, it helped out immensely being technologically savvy.
Yeah. Especially as a 6'1", you do a lot more like data and like networking stuff than you would think when you start messing with the FATIDs and you start doing like, trying to, like we were talking about TLDHS, that tablet that trying to do call for fire with, because everything's moving towards a digital side. And I'm sure, I mean, it, obviously, I've been out of the game for a couple of years now. I'm sure it's only gotten, more towards that. So what was the first unit that you went to?
The first unit I went to was 312 there in Okinawa.
Oh, okay. So that's a good, I mean, at least you got an exposure to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I never went to Okinawa, 12 years, never made it to Japan. How was it for you out there?
Oh man, I'll be honest, I had a blast. Like I said, coming from a small town, pretty strict upbringing, so didn't really get out much or do much other than hunt and fish and that kind of stuff. So going there, it was a blast. My first taste of freedom. That's when they made the drinking age there at 20 years old when I was there. Excuse me. So I went over there. I had a great time. I feel like there's a different side of the Marine Corps over there.
Yeah.
Just because of the camaraderie of when you get off work, you're not all just disappearing like you do in the States to your houses or whatnot. Like everybody kind of stays together all the time. So I think it breeds a little bit of different type of Marine over there and type of environment than it does in the fleet. But I had a great time. I loved Okinawa. I'd go back if I could.
I've actually had a few guys tell me that it feels like a different Marine Corps when you're on Okinawa, and guys that come from like Okinawa over to main side are kind of taken aback a little bit by how lax, the environment is, like dudes walking across the grass and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've always heard guys say that when you come out of Okinawa, you're either like really religious or like an alcoholic or in really good shape.
Yeah, there's not much to do out there outside of those things, right? You can go to the gym all the time, you can go to church, or you can kind of be a partier, right? There's outside of that, and plus I was young.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything. I just went out there and partied all the time. And there's so much other stuff to do that looking back, I wish I'd have done, like, getting my scuba license and going out there to some of the best diving in the world. And some of the more, I don't know if you want to call it touristy, but more mature stuff to do out there. I didn't take advantage of just because I was partying and working. And that was about it. Yeah,
I really wish I would have had the opportunity to go just so I could go through and check out like the old battlefields and stuff, because obviously Okinawa has a lot of history in the Marine Corps just for, as a battlefield. It's got to be kind of weird to live in an area where there's like actual remnants of war all around you, because the whole entire island was a battlefield, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually went on a couple tours of some of the battle sites, which is something I did there that was pretty amazing to see, just especially being able to be in like kind of the enemy fortified positions at the time and stuff like that, and see how they fought and what the Marines that came before me had to fight through in some of those battles. It was pretty interesting to see, honestly. And I was young at the time. I didn't, know a whole lot about a lot, but it was still very interesting to see that.
Did you ever have an opportunity to go out to Iwo Jima?
So there was one trip to go to Iwo Jima that I didn't make it on, and I still regret it to this day. I would have loved to have got out there, especially being more senior now and just having a better grip and understanding of our history and that kind of stuff. I really wish I'd made it out there, but unfortunately I didn't.
Yeah, that was when I was on the 11th MEU the first time, we floated by it, and they made a point about, hey, we're going by Iwo Jima if you want to go outside and take a look. And prior to that, they had made a plan where every section in the MEU could send like one dude or a couple people out, and they were going to take a group tour out to the island and hike to the top of Mount Suribachi. And I was like, dude, that would be so sick. And we could only put up one person's name. I didn't put myself up, obviously. I put Sergeant Flores, my radio comm chief, because he was doing such a good job. And our master sergeant, or our master guns, the ops chief, was like, no, we got to junior Marines first, blah, blah, blah. We got to let them experience stuff. And I'm like, whoa, dude, no one has got to experience this. Like, I get it. Like, that's a thing, but I don't know. I was really butthurt about it because we sent people out, and so many people from the MEU fell out of the hike up Mount Suribachi that they didn't even go all the way to the top. They stopped them.
man.
They had to plug a bunch of people. You know, docs are out there hitting them with silver bullets, and including the guy that came from the S3 from the MEU that we sent. And yeah, Sergeant Major Black, who's now the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, he was out there leading the charge up the hill, and everyone fell out. So they stopped them and made them come back down. I was like, dude, if I'd have been on that and I'd been halfway up Mount Suribachi and didn't get to the top, and you were going to tell me we're going back because too many people are falling out, I would have been super upset. I would have been real pissed. I mean, because that's just, to me, that's inexcusable. You know what I'm saying? Dudes fought and died up that hill, and you can't walk up it with a day pack with snacks in it. You know, like, get the fuck out of here. Man. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wish I would have gotten to do, but whatever, man. That's, you know, I don't know if you can go out there as a civilian, but maybe one day. So at 12th Marines, did you have any actual exposure to, like, I mean, you were a computer guy, you're a data guy, so you weren't really on the hill or doing anything like that. But did you ever get the opportunity to go out and like shoot the 777 or anything?
Well, so I mean, back then it was the 9 or 8, so we had the 1 9 or 8 back then. It was before the time of the 777.
That's true, yeah.
I was on the hill. Like I said, I ran the EPLARs with the FOs, so I was on the hill. That was like my exposure to the MOS. And that's why I decided to lap move into it. But I did get to, pop my cherry, if you will, on a 1 9 or 8 down at the gun line, which was a different experience then than it is now. You know, with the new rules and stuff we have, it's not as physically intense as it used to be.
Oh, yeah? Did you bite the sponge?
Oh, yeah, man. You got to bite the primer, suck the sponge, punch the gun chief.
Oh, is that a thing? I never heard that one.
Well, it used to be a thing, you know.
Nice. So how long were you at 12th Marines?
So I was there full term from 05 to 08. Now, in the middle of that, I did go to Headquarters Battalion on Camp Courtney to be the general's driver for a little bit. And then I went back to 10th Marines after that. So.
I remember you talking about that, actually. How was that? One, how did you get chosen to be the general's driver? And two, how was that as a job or as a billet?
Well, so I went up on a board. I don't remember exactly who all was there. I know it was me, I was a corporal at the time, maybe another corporal, a sergeant, a couple other guys. And you pretty much just did a board in front of the division and battalion sergeant major and a couple other cats and dogs. And then they selected who they thought would be the best. And, back then I was a high and tight screaming motivator, and AJ squared away, like a party, but work was work, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Act like that changed, though. Come on. You always been a little motivated.
A little different now.
Yeah.
Been through some stuff and done some stuff that changes your perspective a bit, but
for sure.
So I got selected for that, and they just pretty much told me like, hey, out of everybody else, you got selected to do it, and so I started doing it. Wasn't a bad gig. You sit up there in the on the command deck and make the coffee and vacuum the carpets and clean up the offices, and then when the general needs to go somewhere, you drive and take him wherever he needs to go. So it wasn't bad.
It's supposed to be a pretty good gig if they're like trying to push a guy forward for possible like future meritorious promotions and stuff like that. It's not given to a shitbag. Obviously, you're driving the general around. I remember the first time I met somebody that was a general's driver. We had this I think he was a machine gunner when I was with 3-6. This dude was he played in the NFL, like hurt his knee or something, so he quit playing in the NFL. He's like with the Panthers or something. Yeah, I know, dude. People were like, did he really? Like, people didn't really believe it. And we were in Marjah in 2011, and the Redskins cheerleaders flew out to FOB Marjah, and which is crazy because that's just a shitty place to fly into.
Yeah.
And I was outside, and he was walking. He was going to get chow or something like that, and all of a sudden this cheerleader comes running by like, oh my God, and jumps on him, wraps her legs around him and stuff, and like, oh my God. She remembered him. She was one of the cheerleaders for his team back in the day. And I'm like, nuts. Holy, that's pretty wild, dude. Yeah. So, and then he came back from that deployment, and he became the general's driver over at, I think, 2nd Marine Division, but.
Yeah. Well, it probably would have ended in some type of meritorious, promotion had I not got in trouble while I was doing it.
Well, if you want to talk about that, you can, or we can just move along.
All right. Yeah, it happened. We can move on. That's all right.
So how long were you in Japan for?
From 05 to 08.
Okay. Wow. So you did a full term out there, huh?
Yeah. Well, I did the 2 years, and then I extended a year for a deployment. Then ended up getting canceled, so I just stayed an extra year out there for nothing.
Oh, nice. And then did you start your lat move package while you were in Okinawa, or when you came to the States? Did you already have orders to go somewhere else in the States?
No, so shortly after I finished my restriction from that NJP, I actually was very surprised I could lat move because I was a Lance Corporal and I'd been reduced. But the monitors did a road show. So I got to go speak to the 0861 monitor, and I mean, I guess the perception and skills that I had in the previous board for the general's driver, I still had them when I went and talked to the monitor.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So he enabled me and allowed me to lap move into the MOS. So I did the package prior to PCSing to the States. So I went from Okinawa straight to Fort Sill to MOS school.
Nice. That's really the way to do it. I highly recommend people that if there's a monitor road show in their area, that they should definitely go talk to them, because that's how you can really make things happen. Because if you don't, you're just a number on a sheet. And where there, you can actually go and talk to them and show them, I don't know, at least have a person-to-person like conversation that, you know, you maybe sway something. Because like when I lap moved, they came out to Iraq. The monitors came out to Iraq. And they initially told me, there was me and another guy waiting. They were like, hey, wait here. There's one boat space left, and we're waiting to find out who gets it. So me and this dude are sitting there, and then they come out, and they're like, hey, man, neither one of you guys got it. Sorry. And we're like, what the fuck?
What?
And I'd already talked to the monitor and stuff like that. And then I went ahead and did some other paperwork, and I was going to come back in and re-enlist the next day. And they told me, I came in the next day, and that's when they told me, like, hey, we opened up another boat space for you. And I was like, no way. Like, so that's how I ended up getting, I was the last dude to get it in 2009. So yeah, I mean, so you were a Lance Corporal. That's a little different. I was a corporal getting kind of close to sergeant when I lap moved, and that kind of swayed my decision of what job I wanted to pick, because I didn't want to go into something that I felt like initially I wanted to be infantry. I didn't think lap moving from being a motor team mechanic at 2nd MLG to being an infantry guy and going to be a senior corporal to maybe get promoted to sergeant before I actually get to the unit would be a good idea, compared to, this is in 2009. So obviously these guys had been in for 06 to 09, which is a pretty rough time frame to be in for deployments and stuff to Iraq. You had like Ramadi and stuff was going on and everything like that. So I just didn't think that it would be a good idea for me to go into that kind of MOS, and that's why I chose to be a fire support man. And my buddy Teddy actually, he's the one, he brought it up. He reminded me about that job. Because he was like, yeah, I'm going to put in my lap move package to be a fire support man. And I'm like, oh yeah, shit, I'm going to do the same thing. That'd be cool. What was like the ultimate like decision that made you like, okay, I want to try this job out?
So actually the point when I decided that's what I wanted to do was actually I was on the hill, and we could see all the gun positions. Mm-hmm. We could see multiple gun positions, and they did. And I mean, I was ignorant to the MOS then. Now I just knew the very basics of the call for fire they taught me. So I believe it was either, I think it was a battalion fire for effect, and I could see all of the gun positions and see them shooting, and then see the impact area where all the rounds were impacting, mm-hmm. and it was awesome to see that. Yeah. And so that's what really was the point where I was like, I'm going to do this job. Yeah. And I decided to start that lap move package. It is
super impressive when you see like a massive amount. I mean, the most impressive one obviously I've ever seen was at Bragg when they do the regimental shoot, and then they do a regimental mass, fly in a general, so he can watch it. I think last one I saw, my scout, I sent him up there, and he's the one that got to do the call for fire for this regimental mass. So Lance Corporal standing next to the general, and calling it in. But it is impressive. It's like, geez, man, one dude is making all of this happen. And it kind of opens your eyes to the amount of, I don't know which one, the influence that you can have on the battlefield if you're proficient at your job, obviously. So yeah, I loved the job after I lap moved. I was super pumped. What year did you go to MOS school?
So it was the end of 08, and then right into the beginning of 09. Okay.
How'd you like Fort Sill?
It was interesting. So by the time I got there, I'd already been promoted to corporal. So I showed up to Fort Sill as a corporal, which is pretty nice, being in an entry-level school with an NCO already. Yeah. I had a lot more freedom than the rest of the students, but I mean, Lawton, Oklahoma, that's kind of the armpit of America right there. That place ain't a place you want to live, I'll tell you that much.
People bitch about Jacksonville and Oceanside outside of Camp Pendleton about being shitholes right outside the base, but I have never seen worse towns than the base towns for Army bases. Every Army base, Fayetteville, Vietnam out there, you got Lawton. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't know, it's rough. It's definitely way worse than, I never thought Jacksonville was too bad. Like a lot of people don't like it, but I didn't think it was too bad out there.
No, I don't mind it.
Yeah. How long did you do any OJT before you went to MOS school, or did you get orders right to school?
That was pretty much just what I had already learned on the hill from being up there with the dudes, because they're pretty open about teaching, the enablers up there on the hill with them, teaching them the job. So I already had a basic understanding and had some reps doing call for fire,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't do just strictly forward observer OJT. I just went straight to the schoolhouse.
Okay, cool. I had to sit at, no, I won't say sit. I did field ops and stuff. I went to 10th Marines in 9 months. I was at 10th Marines for 9 months before they sent me to MOS school. So
That's a hot minute.
I'd already been the chief for a field op. They made me the chief for the field op because my chief had left, and my major had to go to a meeting. So I'm like running a field op, and I hadn't even gone to MOS school yet. I was shitting my pants. Like I was like, oh man, I hope I don't fuck this up. Like I'm clearing actual fires. But it was cool, and you're right. Going to Fort Sill as an NCO is way better because the boots that were there when I went in 2010, they just got treated like garbage. They wouldn't let them. They had no liberties. Can't have TVs in your room. Remember, everybody would eat in the battery office. Like if they had to order food, they couldn't eat it in their room. And
yeah.
Oh my god, that place is ridiculous. So when you lap moved, what unit did you end up going to?
I went to 10th Marines. Specifically Tango.
Yeah, okay.
Tango 510.
510, okay.
Yeah.
Where was 510 at? Were you guys on N Street, or were you guys one of the ones that were right off N Street? Okay.
It was down at the end there towards the River Road.
Yeah.
It's where I work now. It's not 510 anymore, obviously, because they don't exist. But yeah, that's where I was at the end Street there by the water.
Yeah. How did you like 10th Marines compared to 12th Marines?
It was different. Like, and one of the biggest transitions is coming from Okinawa to the States, which is completely different. Because I remember in Okinawa, man, it was the NCOs ran stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's how it was. The NCOs ran stuff. If you had to see like your sergeant, you were messing up. If you had to see your staff sergeant, like you were really jacked up. And heaven forbid if you had to see your gunny.
Yeah.
Now in the States, it seemed like to me just coming there from Okie that the NCOs weren't as empowered, so it was a little different. Almost like being a corporal was like a glorified lance corporal, essentially.
Yeah.
It was a different transition, but I mean, I had some good dudes in my liaison section there, some good leadership that helped shape me and mentor me as an 0861, mostly on the enlisted side, and some good officers and some not. It's hit or miss, just like anything else. But I definitely had some good staff and SEAL leadership that helped bring me up in the MOS.
Yeah. No, I was highly fortunate as well. I showed up to 210, and at the time, Staff Sergeant Klein had just checked in back off I think he came off the drill field, but he had just come in. And, I mean, I honestly couldn't have picked a better person to do OJT under, because this dude is a walking, like, manual. When we would be in the field in the FSCC, when we were done shooting for the day, you set up the radio watch and kick everybody to go to sleep. And he would sit there and fall asleep reading his 3 TAC 16.6 or 3 TAC 16. Yeah. I'm just like, dude. But yeah, that was the reason because he was such a good teacher and the battalion respected him. Like, our liaison section could basically do whatever we wanted because the battalion commander knew that we were getting our work done and we were proficient. And like when we would go to brag, he would come out to our tent and hang out because he'd get tired of hanging out in the COC tent. And he knew that our radios would all be up and that we knew what was going on. So he'd come over there and hang out so he could be away from his own flagpole, if you will. But yeah, I don't know. Definitely having a good, solid staff NCO mentoring you and teaching you is important. For me, I mean, at least you were at 12th Marines before you lap moved. I was with 2nd Maintenance Battalion. Like, I showed up, and Sergeant Delara, my buddy Delara, he had to teach me how to plot on a map. I don't know. I'm a sergeant now, and I don't know any of this. He's like, this is how you do it. And, and it's funny looking back now on stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure you know Rugg. He's the one that first taught me, like, final attack headings and stuff like figuring all that stuff out. So, so now being at the battery as a forward observer, how did that feel after you had come from one, working with liaison, but not necessarily being part of liaison?
It was definitely a lot different. So being in the comm shop and then just going up on the hill when they needed me, it's very pretty structured in the comm shop. And then coming to the battery and being in the liaison section, after I had deployed with 510 with 2.6, it was comparatively, it was very similar to the life that FOs have over in the infantry, right? You're just kind of what they do over there. It's kind of you're doing your own thing. You know, you do your job as required, but other than that, it's not crazy structured like it was in the comm shop back when I was in that MOS.
Yeah, it's kind of nice being a lat mover, and the fact that you can point out stuff that the job that you used to have, you can be like, hey, that's not right. Like, you're not doing that right. Or when they try to BS you about something, you're like, no, what are you talking about? That's not even, you know. I had to tread lightly though, because having been a mechanic prior to, if I spoke up too much with too much knowledge, I could easily get put back on working on a truck or something like that. So I definitely didn't want that to happen. How long were you there before you found out you were going to go on your first deployment?
I think it was around 8 months to a year. I mean, it's all of it kind of blurs together after a certain amount of years, but I think it's about eight months to a year maybe. And when I found out I was chopping.
Who were you deploying with?
I deployed with Golf Company 26.
Okay. So, and for those that don't know, traditionally, you know, your forward observers are at the artillery unit. Obviously, now I'm assuming they're still like this, but when I was there, they were at the headquarters battery. They had headquarters battery with all the scouts there. And then as deployments came out, you just chop over to the infantry unit. And the life of a forward observer or a scout, you feel like the bastard child of artillery, because everything's your fault. Like, artillery is messing up. You know, the rounds aren't hitting right because of the observer for whatever reason. You know, that's what everybody says, at least. And then you chop over to the infantry and you're an attachment. So no one over there cares about you until they need fires. You know, no one understands or cares about fires until they need it. And then they're like, hey, could you do that thing where you blow stuff up? You know? So what was it like chopping from the artillery unit over to the infantry unit and like getting your feet wet working with those guys the first time?
So it was definitely an interesting experience for me because, like I said, I didn't do any deployments when I was in Okinawa. The one I was going to do got canceled. So it was my first go at it, and I went there as an FO, and I was an FO, but I was also kind of like a radio man because being prior comm, I did a lot of OGT on the radios, so I was very proficient in radios when I went over there. So I kind of dual had it as a forward observer and a radio guy, but it was it was definitely eye-opening going to my first CACs and seeing live combined arms, you know what I mean, on those ranges out there and seeing that kind of stuff. It was definitely an interesting experience that really opened my eyes to kind of the combined arms environment, if you will.
Yeah, so you were down on a company fist then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the time, and I know when I was there, at least, they were saying they weren't letting lat movers be chiefs until they had done a deployment. They also weren't letting lat movers go to become a JTAC either until they had done a deployment. It was like you got to go kind of earn your piece, you know, make sure everybody, you know what you're doing. Unfortunately, I got stuck as a chief on my first deployment as a scout. They were like, hey, we need a chief, and you're pretty good at what you're doing, so you're going with 3-6, which wasn't too bad. Like you said, a lot of my scouts actually carried the radio, because they were so proficient in comm. So it's not uncommon because infantry is short on stuff. They use their radio operators in a different fashion. They'll put them on radio watch or whatever. But if you can have a guy that can carry a radio and do call for fire and whatever, like, why not just give him and let him do everything? I didn't get to do that. I sat in the COC most of the time. I did some operations with 3-6, but nothing major. I did like a helo insert, and I'd go out like once a week basically, but I didn't get to do like the cool stuff I thought I was going to get to do with, like my scouts were doing. However, none of them got to do a call for fire. I did all the fires actually, either, from the COC and stuff. So that was the cool part about being a chief at the time. When you were working with your company, how hard was it for you to like embed with them and then kind of try to, mold them to use you like you should be used as a scout?
So I guess it's just kind of like anything you go into as an outsider, right? You got to kind of earn your piece.
Yeah.
So you gotta be able to keep up with the dudes, right? You can't be falling out of stuff. You got to be able to keep up with the rucks and the humps and whatever else it is, and then your job proficiency. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you come there and you show that you can be, a humble, consummate professional and be very proficient at your job, then they'll pull you in, welcome you. But if you show up and you're a bag of ass and you look like ass and you can't perform, or you come there and you're arrogant, you know what I mean, they're going to ostracize you.
Yeah.
And so being very proficient but also humble is important, and it enables you to kind of be able to shape more of how you're used because they trust that you're knowledgeable in your MOS. So they're a lot more open to listening to you, because a lot of guys go over there and they think they can pull the wool over their eyes, but come on, man, you're not the first fire supportman they've had over there.
Yeah.
This ain't their first rodeo, so they know if you're trying to bullshit them. So you can't be pulling none of that, or you won't fit in. So it worked out fairly well.
Which company did you say you were with? With 26?
Golf company.
Golf company 26. Who all was on your fist team, or your fist? If you remember.
Off the top of my head, I can't even remember, man.
That's fine. I forget so many names. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Especially as much as we bounce around, man, and switch and change, and especially further on in my career as I bounced around, to all these different units or teams or whatnot. It kind of blurs together, and it's hard for me to remember, to be honest.
Yeah. No,
but
that's cool.
I remember the guys, the other JTACs. So I had Sergeant Kalo. I don't know if you knew Kalo, but Jason Kalo, he passed away on that deployment.
Yep. He
was one of the JTACs, and then we had Sergeant Davis was another one that was there. So I remember those guys. I don't really remember like the FIST leaders or anything, because we didn't do a whole lot of FIST stuff after CACs. It was kind of, I was just there embedded with the squads going on patrols.
Yeah. So how did they use your FIST? Did the rest of your team, because for those that don't know, a FIST is made up of a lieutenant that's an 0802, usually a lieutenant or a junior, like a super junior captain if he's still a FIST leader. You have your radio operator, and then you have your scout. How did they use those two guys, like the lieutenant and the radio operator, for anything, or were you the only one that got used?
So they generally pulled the lieutenant in, from my recollection, in a lot of the planning phase of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be in there too, but he'd be in there, especially with the JTAC, and they'd be doing a lot of the planning portion. But I was just kind of the day-to-day guy that would go on the patrols with the dudes, right? I'd throw my radio on my back and I'd go out and do comms, or never actually any fire missions, because half the time it seemed like we didn't have anything supporting us. So I was just out there, just in case we got something and we needed it, or to carry the radio and just be out there with the dudes. So that was kind of my role out of the FIST. The other guys, I wasn't tied in too much with them. And then a lot of the time the radio operator didn't go from the FIST. The company radio operator would go, because I was in the company staff a lot of the time. So it would be, the CO, the radio operator, me, a couple other cats and dogs.
Okay. Back to Kalo. Yeah, I knew Kalo. He was, him and Delara were like the first two sergeants I met when I got to 210. Super cool dude. Great guy. He was like, I don't know. He was one of the first dudes to sit down and just talk to me. And like, I'd go to the field and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting a little, I don't know. He was a good dude.
Yeah. He was a great dude, man. Great mentor. He mentored me a lot in that phase before I was a JTAC. And really, he was kind of my drive and inspiration to become the JTAC, and that I did, and the drive behind me wanting to be so proficient at it was really kind of his legacy and honor that moved on through me is the way I looked at it, because he was a big driving force in my development, and he was a great dude, man. And he's missed, definitely.
For sure. So when you guys deployed, you guys were heading into Marjah, right? Or where were you initially going? Because you took part in Operation MARSOC, correct?
So it was after 1-6 did the clear. So 1-6 had established Kapazadi, and they were there after they'd done the clear, and then we came in and ripped that with 1-6 in Kapazadi, which was south of Marjah, so the south side down there. Yeah. I remember Azadi. We had one of my teams was down there. That was and when I was there in 2011, that was a quieter area. And the captain, the company commander that was in that area when I was there, did not like fires dudes for some reason. He took my scout and made him the company radio watch, and took the radio like comm dude and put him out on patrols to be whatever. And I'm like, dude, this dude knows how to do radios and like all this other stuff. Like, what are you doing? And they just wouldn't have anything, they wouldn't have any part of it. And it was a pretty quiet area for most of our deployment. And then towards the end, there was some kind of attack that happened. And this dude, no shit, called my phone. I was in the COC at 3-6, and called the phone. He's like, hey, Sergeant Kramer, this is so-and-so, we're having this stuff going on down here. Is there any way you can get one of those goalpost things going or something? Like said it like that. This is towards the end of the deployment. Yeah.
And I'm like, sir, I'm tracking what's going on. If you open up your fires window, because they wouldn't even monitor the fires window in Merc chat. I'm like, if you open up the fires window, I've already got the goalpost hot, and I'm talking to the HIMARS battery right now. Like, dude, you fucking, just the epitome of someone that would piss you off, So what was it like, man? What was your first deployment? What was... You made it, you were a Marine, you came from a civilian, you wanted to join the Marine Corps and go to war and stuff, and then you got that opportunity. How did you walk away from that?
Uh, Definitely different. It's, especially as a young Marine and everything, it's kind of glamorized, right? Like
Hmm.
it's kind of glamorized just from what you see on TV or whatnot. So you can't wait to go, and you get there, and it's not as glamorous, right, as you think,
It's
or
boring as
as
fuck.
cool. Now, don't get me wrong. Like being in combat or in firefights or even just out on a combat patrol is exhilarating, man. There's an adrenaline there and a rush that you can't compare to anything else. But at the same time, your friends are getting wounded or killed, and there's the casualties that come along with it that make it very difficult.
Hmm.
Now, that not to say I would change a damn thing. I'd go back in a heartbeat and do exactly the same thing and deal with the pain and the loss because of just the bond that you get with those dudes. You can't compare it to anything else in the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what anybody says. That bond you build with those dudes living side by side for months in the dirt, patrolling, getting shot at, doing all that kind of stuff, man.
Hmm.
It's an amazing bond that you build with those people.
For sure, man. And that, I think that kind of bond and what you're talking about and those kind of living conditions, they really bring you together as a team, and they make you really appreciate, the little things, not just in life, but just like in the Marine Corps, like the little comforts and stuff that you get. And you also see like real leadership, the real leaders really stand apart, and you see who is out there to lead and just make sure their dudes are good and make sure everything works and that we're conducting combat operations the way we're supposed to. And then you see the guys that are out there that are chasing awards, or they're too scared to go out and do anything because they don't want to get anyone hurt, which I understand. You don't want to get somebody hurt, but you still have to be able to do the mission at the same time. And I think that really was one of the things that it left a really bad taste in my mouth after I did the MEU, because I don't know if I'm not sure if you've been on a MEU or been on ship, but the hierarchy of rank is like old school. As a staff sergeant, it'd be like, why are you walking down this P-way? Like, you're not an officer. Like, who are you? And I'm like, dude, I work over here. I'd be getting stopped like legitimately, I'd have to give up my guys to go do fucking laundry and wash the officer's laundry and stuff like that and deliver it to them. And I was just like, this is ridiculous, man. I came from a unit where I slept next to my captain. We both slept in the same fucking dirt hole, and we ate the same food he ate before me. Where on ship, you're starving down in the troop berthing, and the officers can eat as much as they want and stuff. Every once in a while, they'll have like a steak day. They come out and make steaks for you. You're like, oh, here you go. And it's like, dude, fuck you,
Here you go, peasants.
Exactly. No, that's exactly how it is. It's how it feels too.
I'll be honest, I dodged that my whole career, man. I never wanted to go on a MEU. I never wanted to get stuck on a ship. And I got lucky. I didn't physically dodge any, like, hey, you're going on the MEU. I just got lucky in everything I did, and there was never an opportunity for me to go, and I'm blessed by that, I think.
Yeah. That's kind of wild. You never did a 31st MEU while you're out in Okie. Don't most guys rotate through that, especially since you're on the island?
I think so. I mean, I'm not really sure. I didn't get any exposure to the MEUs while I was out there.
Did you get to do any kind of traveling while you're out there to like Philippines or like Australia or anything?
Yeah. I went to Thailand and got to do Cobra Gold.
Nice. I never I've never made it to Thailand. Was it everything you thought?
It's insane. I'll tell you that.
Did you got libo in Thailand?
Oh yeah, we got 4 days in Pattaya Beach.
Nice.
Which is the training's insane too, but also the liberty. It's like, I mean, it's a grown man's paradise there in Thailand.
Yeah,
it's nuts. But the training's crazy too. Like you saw that Marine Corps Times article, I think it was recently, about like the Marines got to stop killing the cobras and drinking the blood. Like, do that. Like you catch the cobra, cut its head off, drink the blood, because they believe over there that if you drink the blood of the cobra, you get the strength of the cobra. So it's part of the jungle survival training, which is pretty interesting.
So you drink the blood, huh?
Yeah, you drink the blood. They go around the horn and drain it out of the snake, and then they drain it into the rest of it into a big vat of whiskey. And you take a shot of the cobra blood whiskey there.
Nice.
Also ate some bugs and stuff. It was interesting.
It's funny how when you work with these foreign nationals, the weird stuff that you end up eating. My when I was on the MEU, we did a exercise in Malaysia, and I had to stay on board the ship for it, which is kind of good, I guess. They were all flooded out and living in the mud basically. But Michael Farrell, who's been on the show a couple times, he ate monkey and iguana. And I'm like, ooh, man, I don't know about eating a monkey. Like, it feels a little too close to home to eat something that has thumbs on it. But, I mean, where else you eating monkey and iguanas but, overseas? So in Afghanistan, back to that, what was like your average day, like patrolling and stuff? What did you end up doing?
So it depended on if we were, if we were the squad that was patrolling that day, or if I was getting attached to the squad that was patrolling that day. I kind of bounced around.
Hmm.
So if we got up and went on a patrol, pretty much every morning, late morning, and then early afternoon, maybe it wasn't our squad, but it was a squad that was out. It was generally there was a tick every morning and every afternoon.
Really?
And so part of the time I also was COC, radio watch on
Hmm.
Merc, all that kind of stuff. So every day, yeah, it was almost the same thing every day in the morning and afternoon. We're getting saltos, you know what I mean? We're reporting them up and dudes are in contact.
Yeah.
It kind of eventually would start to slow down, but it was pretty consistent when we first got there. And then obviously, you have the IED strikes on occasion, mounted patrols going back and forth, resupply, all that kind of stuff. And then I was also the SOG, so I would post and relief the guys on the different posts for the cop, and then just go around to the different posts, make sure they were good. Kind of built up some of the some of the concealment and cover and stuff around the posts, and really got those built up so the guys were a little more protected and just safer up in the posts, because it wasn't irregular that when I first got there that the cop would get direct fire. It would get shot. Like, we were eating breakfast. I remember one of the first days I was there, and there was rounds hitting up high on the buildings. It was like a tall cement structure and little chips of cement, falling in our chow.
Yeah.
While we eat. So it wasn't irregular for that to happen.
That's what it was like when I got to Sangin. I flew into Fob Jackson, and that night, the advisor team that we were taking over for, were super pumped that we were there. They were like, oh, thank God, we're going home. And so we had a cookout that night. They had gotten steaks and stuff, and we're out there grilling with them. And dude, almost every night it was just tracer fire that flew right over the camp, and it would hit stuff sometimes inside the camp. I remember one of the we had these plywood wag bag stations that someone had built. And one night we came out there, or the next day we came out there, and there was a hole through it. It was like a 7.62 round that had gone through like head height. And we're like, oh shit. So then, they sandbagged up the wag bag station and stuff like that. But
yeah,
it's weird. You get used to it though. You're like, oh, I'm sitting here cooking a steak. It's just like, I'm safe right here. I'm behind this wall. Like, nothing's gonna, it's not like you can just fall down and hit me, but it's just, it's a weird environment for sure. So you went out on patrols and stuff like that. What was your average patrol length, do you think?
But average length, I don't know. So it varied. We did the longest one we did was like I want to say it was 3 days. We went out and cleared an area where we established a new patrol base. So we went out there for 3 days, big loop around, stayed out in like compounds overnight and stuff. But most of the time, I think it was a few hours or so. I wasn't out on the patrols every single day.
Yeah.
A lot of the squads were though. They were out there every single day, man. Just hooking and jabbing every day.
Yeah.
So it was definitely taxing. But yeah, a couple hours average, except for that 3 day clear. It was pretty long.
What patrol base did you build?
I want to say it was Beirut was the one out there to the west, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's been a while. Memory's a little foggy, but I think it was Beirut out to the west.
Yeah. What did you normally carry when you were out on patrol? Like, what did you have on you?
So obviously I normally had my my weapon system, full mags, water, chow, radio, extra batteries, carried a vector. Let's see, what else did I have out there? I don't remember if I had binos or not, but all the usual kind of stuff you carry, maps. It was all, it wasn't like tablets or any of that kind of stuff then. Yeah. Paper maps, and mostly the heavy stuff was the radio, all the extra batteries, and water, especially on that 3 day pass. I was carrying a lot of stuff, man. I remember it was heavy.
I bet, man. Were you carrying a 117 Golf or Fox?
I'm pretty sure it was a Fox then.
Probably.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, the Golfs would have been just coming out then.
Yeah.
I remember when we were there in 2011, the 3.6's comm chief wouldn't let anybody take the Golfs out. He's like, these are for data use only. And they just like, I'd go out there and they'd be sitting on the shelf not being used at all. And I'm like, dude, can we fucking carry that? Like, this is like literally half the size of these other radios. You guys aren't even using them. And they just wouldn't let anybody use them. I'm like, God, fucking dicks. Did your like layout of what you carried on you change throughout the deployment? Did you like, okay, why am I carrying this? I don't need this. I get this. I need to bring this.
Yeah, as I went through, I think I kind of moved stuff around. Just some of it's, creature comfort. Just okay, that rubs wrong here, that
Yeah.
rubs wrong there, or like I don't need this or I don't need that. I think it's definitely dynamic and changes, but I think that's really any deployment is you kind of feel it out and
Hmm.
what you need, what you expected you needed, maybe you don't, or something that you didn't expect you need, you do. So adjusting your kit accordingly, I think, happens most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I was there in 13 and singing, I was taking like 4 magazines out. I'd take a box of ammo and put it in my pack, but I had like 4 mags because I seen guys that would carry like 6 mags or sometimes 8 mags, like being ridiculous. I'm like, all right, man, like if we're getting into a point where you need that many magazines, like, I don't know, something else might be going on. Like I need to be doing my job over here as the JTAC if that's happening.
Right.
And I would carry I had what's the little mini Vector, the little
The
tan,
plurf?
yeah, the plurf. I had the plurf,
Mm-hmm.
which was pretty good. It quit working on me twice in 2 different firefights where anything beyond like 20 or 30 yards, it was telling me like 50 yards. It wouldn't give me the actual range. So that kind of sucked. And that honestly gave me more incentive when I came back to just push on the junior guys. Like, dude, your equipment's going to fail. Like, this is the newest piece of gear that we got. And, these came out of the keyhole suites is what they were called at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's going to fail on you. So you got to have a plan to back up like that technology. So yeah. All right. How long, well, is there any interesting like engagements or anything you want to talk about from that deployment?
I mean, not particularly. Like I said, I went on patrols and got in some stuff sometimes, but it wasn't like I was out there, just in gunfights every day. That
Yeah.
wasn't me. That was the credit goes to the O3s, man, that were with me out there. Those dudes were in that shit every day, and
Yeah.
hats off to them, man. They did a hell of a job out there.
I didn't
Nothing
realize,
but props to those dudes.
I didn't realize it was that active in that area still after the clear
Yeah.
had been done and stuff.
Yeah, man, we were honestly surprised when we first got there how active it was so close to the patrol base. I guess they kind of, got emboldened after 1-6 got there and kind of got set in.
Yeah.
Especially like fucking props to those dudes, man. That clear was no joke. So those dudes, I can imagine, were just wore out by the time they got there. You know what I mean? We're wrapping up. So we were honestly surprised, and some of the also the proximity of some of the IEDs to the cop were pretty close. But those dudes are sneaky, man. They're sneaky over there. So
Dude, they're
getting up
ninjas.
under our vision wasn't too difficult for them. They've been doing that shit for a long time.
We would have route clearance go through, and they would get backlayed. As soon as they clear a route. I remember in Marjah route Alligator, the route clearance would go up that and clear that entire route, then turn around and come back down it, and then get blown up like twice on the way back. It's like,
it was
dude,
nuts.
and it's so hard to catch those dudes putting in an IED, man. They were quick. I don't know. They had a whole system set up. It was just, I don't know. It's crazy. How often did you go on a mounted patrol? I know you said you went out every once in a while, but was it mostly on foot or was it more mounted?
So I would say it was probably a good mix. So most of the time when we were doing mounted patrols, it wasn't like it was on foot. On foot, we were doing like presence patrols and all that kind of stuff. But when we were mounted, it was generally going somewhere to, we had to go over here and resupply something or go do this meeting or planning for something. So that's normally what it was like maybe logistics or admin movements, if you will. But that didn't stop them from, sometimes engaging the convoys or whatnot.
Yeah.
I was a VC for my truck most of the time. And, 90% of the time I just was trying to keep my driver from driving into wadis. So
Nice. Did you know that when you came back from that deployment that you'd probably get screened to go to TACP school and do the whole JTAC thing?
I wasn't sure. Like I said, Kayla had a lot of influence on me, and I was interested in it, but I wasn't sure how I was going to progress when I got back.
Yeah.
Honestly, didn't know. I was really just couldn't wait to get back. You know what I mean? That was my first time deploying. First time outside of the States in that kind of environment. And I was really focused on just getting back and being able to be in the United States.
Yeah.
And then once they started talking about it, I was one of the first dudes threw my hand up that I wanted to go to TACP.
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool, man. It's when I came over to 10th Marines and they were like, hey, you're a sergeant. Well, so Gunny Klein was like, he's like, hey, what do you think you're going to be doing here? And I'm like, be the link between artillery and infantry, like I'm not sure. He's like, yeah, that's a Lance Corporal's job. You're a sergeant. You're going to be a fires chief. And I'm like, damn it. Like, he's like, and then he's like, unless you become a JTAC. And I'm like, yes, I'll do that. Like, let me do that too,
Yes.
So I had to cut my teeth first as a chief. And then I got the opportunity to go to TCP school. And it was cool. I got to work with some really good dudes before I went that, like like you said, it's always good to have a good influence, someone to teach you. Tony Musselman, he was actually Kalo's replacement. I remember after.
Yeah, I remember.
Kalo got.
He knocked my bottle of Tapatio over and broke it after he came and replaced Kalo.
That's a huge deal overseas.
Oh yeah, if he watches this, Tony, you still owe me a bottle of Tapatio, man.
He probably doesn't have time. I actually talked to him like 2 weeks ago. He's in the middle of he's like a fish and wildlife dude, and he's in the middle of some kind of spawning season for some fish. So he's out spawning fish or something. So because I'm gonna try to get him on the show at some point. But guys like that though that are just professionals. They take the job seriously, and it's just good to have people like that around. It's nice working with professionals and stuff like that. And I don't know. At 10th Marines, I felt like I had a really good. I don't know. Most of the people I met, I never had too many issues with. Most of the dudes I worked with were really good professionals and willing to teach other people and bring you up to speed and stuff like that. So, what did you do to prepare for TACP school when you got back?
So I'm if I remember correctly, I went relatively soon after coming back because I went in 2011, which is when I came back from that deployment. So I did the online primers.
Which are worthless.
So I did the online primers there on MarineNet, and then I think that might have been pretty much it, man. And then I went to TACP school.
What'd you think about TACP school?
I definitely thought it was interesting. So that wasn't too long after they started allowing enlisted JTACs. Mm-hmm. So it was still a lot of seemed like a lot of kind of officers should be doing this mentality, and some of the people, not all the people, but some of them. Yeah. But it was good, man. I went there and I learned a lot. Obviously, I came out successful, graduated the school, and it was I think I was well prepared just from learning from dudes around me in 10th Marines before I went.
When you came back from school, did you stay at 510 or did they move you up to regiment?
So I came back from school and I actually chopped right for my next deployment with 2-6 again, and I went straight out of school to a CAC. So pretty much like out of the pot into the fire. Yeah.
Yeah. I never, as a JTAC, I never went to 29 Palms and got to do any controls. Like, I don't think I got any controls out of 29 Palms. Yeah. Which is like the place to do it.
Yeah. Especially during a CACs, man. It was really just pretty much getting my shit pushed in because I was brand new and didn't know anything about anything really except the basics. And we didn't have all the technology then. So I'm running through linear town and it's 110 degrees out. I'm sweating all over my map and smearing map pen everywhere. They're throwing arty sims at me. I'm just shitting my pants. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it was an invaluable experience as a junior JTAC coming out the other side of CACs. I feel like I was a much better JTAC than I was had I just went to TACP school and then, to a deployment or done something else. It was phenomenal. And then also getting to actually see firsthand live ordnance. Yeah. You can't trade that off for a sim or anything, man. Seeing live ordnance is an eye opener. For sure. Honestly, I think every JTAC should do that before they employ it in combat. That was one of
my biggest complaints is I never saw a live bomb drop until I got to Afghanistan. Like they didn't. I went to TACP school at EWTG Lant, so we went to Navy Dare and then OP5 over at Camp Lejeune and stuff like that. And it's all SIM ordnance, or it's all like the 25 pound. What's it? The Mark 48.
The inert.
Yeah, the inert round. So yeah, my first live bomb was live bombs that I saw was in Afghanistan, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Now I know. Good to know,
that looks a lot different.
Yeah. Which is, I say, yeah, I don't know. I can't believe they even let me go, without having seen a real bomb. But at the time, and as well as I do, at the time, the tempo for JTACs were like just out of control. That first class of dudes like Kalo and Rug and all those dudes, they, immediately after TACP school, like you, it was like, all right, here's your deployment. And then I remember Rug was deployed, and before he even came back, he already knew what his next deployment was. And that was like it was like common theme then. So that was like, hey, I want to go be a JTAC, and it's super cool, but the downfall is you're never home. So I guess if you can put up with that, it's not too shabby. Do you think TACP school prepared you for 29 Palms and then going to overseas, or do you think it was a good base?
I think it's a good baseline. I mean, I think it's just like any other really entry level school, if you will. It gives you a baseline and essentially the playbook to work off of. You know what I mean? If you can't call an audible if you don't know the playbook, so you have to know the playbook front and back before you can start calling those audibles and doing some of that varsity level stuff.
Yeah.
That necessarily they don't teach you there, but especially in the time frame there, you're not going to get to that level in that school until you get out and get some of that experience. And that's part of the reason with the TNR now. Like, we didn't have a TNR when I first became a JTAC. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
And then I left the fleet before they and they had it in place. And then when I came back to the fleet recently, there's the TNR, and I'm like, oh, what is this? I don't even know what this is.
Yeah.
And so now there's the other level codes of the TNR that we have to get those dudes through before they can get designated. Mm-hmm. Whereas me, I came out of the schoolhouse and I'm designated, right? So these dudes now have more stuff they have to do outside of school before they can get designated to be a JTAC.
Yeah, that was something I would tell guys that kind of surprised a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, I never went through a designation phase. Like, I came out of TACP school. I went out to the Hill like twice, and they're like, all right, man, you're going to Sangan with this advisor team. And I'm like, oh, fuck, because the thing about being on an advisor team is you don't have any other JTACs, you don't have an air officer, you don't have facts that you can be like, hey, man, I'm going to lean on you and we're going to learn from each other and stuff like that. So I was like a nerd. I was in my pubs constantly. Like, I was trying to like absorb as much as I could because I was really afraid that I was going to mess something up and get someone killed or something like that. Just because I hadn't done it yet. It was just like, I'm learning it. I'm on the fly, like trying to figure all this stuff out, and I didn't have anybody to lean on. How often did you, or how would you say that support structure worked for you, working in an actual air shop with other people that you could learn from? Do you think did you have a good like group of JTACs on your second deployment there with 2-6?
Yeah. So I had a good air officer, phenomenal air officer there in the battalion, and I actually deployed with the battalion. So I was essentially the assistant air officer for the battalion. So we worked well as a team, a lot of support down there for the guys. And now it wasn't near anything like Marjah. You know what I mean? It wasn't kinetic like that.
Where were you at on the second deployment?
I was in Nawa at FOB Geronimo.
Okay.
So it wasn't nearly anything like Marjah. But I had a phenomenal air officer. He's still in now, Boomhauer. He's C-130 guy, so he was my air officer at the time, and he was a great dude to work with. Had a phenomenal experience.
That's awesome, man. It's real hit. I hate to say it, but it's like hit and miss when you have your non-shooter pilots. Some of them are. It is. Some of them are really good, and some of them it's like, dude, I don't really feel comfortable with you controlling anything. And it's not their fault. It's just they don't come from a background of either a combat pilot, like a shooter platform, or they don't come from like us, like an observer background where you're used to target location and stuff like that. So it's definitely a steeper learning curve for those guys. When you went back to 2-6, was there a lot of the same personalities there? Did you deploy with a lot of the same people?
Yeah, so there was a lot of familiar faces there, especially since it was such a quick turn from the first deployment to the second. We still had Sergeant Major Fry there, who was a phenomenal Sergeant Major for both deployments. Nothing but good things to say about him. And I had a lot of people that I knew, and my relationships there were already founded and pretty much established. So it was a relatively easy transition going back to the same unit, which isn't normally the case, right? I just got lucky, and it happened to line up with the deployments. The timeline just lined up perfectly where I ended up chopping in 2-6 again. It was just, I don't know, like fate or something. It normally doesn't happen like that, at least in my experience.
Yeah, no, that's definitely awesome, because now people can vouch for you. The people that knew you already can be like, yeah, this dude's legit. So there's no because you never know when you get new guys. You question them at first, like, okay, is this guy going to be good? Like, can he hold his own, or can we let him go, or do we need to keep him in tight because he's not that great?
And that actually helped me out, because I actually got in a fight at Camp Wilson. And knocked this kid out.
Oh, really?
And he had been doing some stuff he shouldn't have been doing, and he swung at me first, but I knocked him out. And so the first sergeant was, he was pretty upset about it, but Sergeant Major Fry already knew me, so he called me in and asked me what happened, and I explained to him, verbatim what happened, and that relationship that I already had with him, because he knew me, he knew I was an honest person. I told him what happened, and he. Nothing came of it, because I was in the right and the other dude was in the wrong. So those relationships do help out, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you're an asshole, life is a lot harder. Like, you're going around pissing everybody off, burning bridges.
You got shirts that say that, man?
I should make some.
Make that a shirt, dude.
So when you got back from that second deployment, or is there anything you want to talk about specifically about that second deployment? Maybe the differences between the first and second?
It was pretty boring. I was just sitting up there in the TAC, running sensors or running the zone. One thing that was kind of cool was, it was one of the test beds for that UAS helicopter they were trying back in the day.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of cool. The dudes would, it had a cockpit still. So I'd talk to the dudes on Merc up there. I don't remember if it was Leatherneck or what, but they'd actually throw like Red Bull and stuff in the cockpit when they had it fly down there. So I could go in there and get some Red Bulls out, and dudes took care of us. It was good, man. The chow was a lot better because there was the DFAC there. So that was
I remember that we were down at Fob Marjah without running water, and guys would go over to Geronimo and they'd come back and be like, dude, they got milkshakes. And we're like, man, fuck you guys.
Yeah, they got ice cream, bro.
Are you kidding me? Like, this is crazy.
It wasn't bad living, man.
Yeah. It's like I said, man, once you've okay, for me, 2013, living in Sangin was the worst living conditions I've lived in. You know what I'm saying? It was shooting, like I said, they were shooting every night over the camp. So tracer fire all the time. I mean, suicide bomber outside the camp in the bazaar. There was RPGs getting shot at our helicopters. And you're living in I was living in a dirt bunker, basically. I was living in like a HESCO bunker. It was just living in dirt, barely getting any food. Like we were starving out there. And it was my best deployment, 100%.
Yeah,
because
it is.
I was doing my job. I felt like what I was doing, I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. You know what I'm saying? You have a sense of purpose and stuff like that. Whereas in 2009, when I was in Iraq and I was a mechanic, I'm like, why am I fucking on this base, man? Like, people would complain about their AC not working, and there was some guys that could get internet in their cans, in the little trailer things that we lived in, and they would complain about the internet. They'd be like, "Oh, we're in River City, so we can't get on the internet. This is bullshit." I'm like, we're in River City because someone just got killed, right?
Yeah, somebody fucking died, dude.
Yeah, I know, and dudes are just like, "Whatever, man." I'm like, so it's that comfortable living is not it. Living out there.
No, it's not.
You grow a bond with people, and then you learn how to appreciate the little things. You do. I'm such a happy-go-lucky person. Like nothing doesn't bother, nothing bothers me. I just go around and people are like, "You're not upset about this?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't care, man." Like, and in the grand scheme of things, like this doesn't matter. Like whatever. It's just, shitty living like that definitely makes you appreciate it. And like I said, I walked away from that feeling like that was the opportunity of a lifetime because I got to do my job and I felt like I was efficient and proficient and So I don't know. I'm sure you felt the same way, from your first or second deployment.
I'd have left GMO to go back down to Azadi in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in Fob Marjah, like I said, we didn't have running water. And then we eventually moved up to Camp Hansen that had running water, but it was still not great. But they flew me into Leatherneck one time for a fires conference. I'm not sure why Sergeant Kramer got sent to Leatherneck to go sit in this fires conference because it was all like E8s and E9s and O5s and stuff. And I'm sitting there in like frogs with my rifle. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? And after being there for 2 days, I'm like, I need to get back to the fob, man. Like, this is not it. And like, just the stupidity, I had my grocery list that everyone gave me of stuff they wanted me to try to carry.
1 million cans of dip.
Yeah, I came back or I left with an empty ruck. I was like, all right, I'm gonna take my empty ruck. Some dude was trying to. He's like, he's like, if you find one, I'd like you to pick up a microwave. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Let's see if I can find a microwave.
Where am I gonna put it, man?
I'm gonna lug it on the helicopter back. Excuse me, guys, let me put my microwave over here in this seat real quick. But yeah, so when you came back from that deployment, that's about the time we met, right?
Yeah. It was after that when I came over there to ATS.
So were you there in 13 then as well in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I think it was it was 10 to 11, and then I think 11 to 12 actually I think is what the second one was. 11 to 12 or 12 very beginning of 13. They like I said, the dates all kind of You were at regiment for a little bit then before I got there. Yeah,
I didn't get there
I went
until
to
August.
regiment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so for those that, like I said at the beginning, that's where you and I met. And we were teaching the JTAC and JFO primers, which was cool. It was me, you. Who did we have? Me, you, Cheese. We had Gator, freaking Nate. I don't remember his call sign. And then Tom Miller, and I don't remember his call sign either. And Top Corinthi, and that was awesome. That was such a like breath of fresh air, like coming there. Like we had one job. It was like, hey, teach guys to become JTACs or become JFOs, like get them ready for the schoolhouse and go support units for TACP shoots. And Top Corinthi, I think, was I think he gave us a lot of flexibility to do, because his own plate was pretty full already.
Oh yeah.
And he gave us the leeway to make decisions like, hey, this dude's not going to make it to school. I think we should drop him. And he took that like, okay, like I trust you and I'm going to verify, but I trust your judgment, and I thought that was a great opportunity for like for a junior staff sergeant to come into and have exposure to that. And it also, for me, it really made me a better JTAC, like a traditional JTAC, if you will, just because we were constantly going over the material and learning the stuff. And I used everything that I got there. I actually I think I burned a CD before I left there of all the courseware. And when I went to like Anglico and we were on the Muse and stuff, I would teach JFO and JTAC primers on the ships and to the snipers and the recon guys and stuff like that, because it's, what if the JTAC gets smoked in the head? Someone's got to pick up the radio and do the call for fire. So I always thought I looked at it as my job to make sure other people around me knew what the hell was going on. That way, if, I got smoked, like, hey man, you got to step up and save the day because I'm gone now. So yeah. I don't know, man. That was just such a good time. And it's weird because it felt like we all knew each other for a long time, but it was only a couple months. I was only there for a couple of months and then executed orders. So once I punched out to First Anglico, around the same time is when you screened to go over to Raider Battalion or MARSOC or however. What do you guys prefer to call it?
I mean, it's over big picture. I mean, it's MARSOC. But when I came back, it's funny. People were still calling it. What were they calling it? MSOB. That's MSOB. When I first went there. It was MSOB. Okay. But then it changed to MRB. But dudes in the fleet were still calling it MSOB when I came back. Yeah.
So, and this part of the interview is one of my main reasons I wanted to have you come on, because I know there's a lot of guys that are out there that are 0861s or that, are in that community or working their way towards that community that want to go over to Raider Battalion or MARSOC to become a JTAC. And it's not really clear to the guys that are, in the big Marine Corps, like what the steps are to get over to that. And then like what happens once you get there. So without giving away, trade secrets or anything, if you could talk about kind of like what your screening process was or what people could expect if that's something that they're interested in doing.
Yeah, so I had pestered Top Training to let me screen over there, and he talked to Top Nickum at the time, who was over there to bring me over and screen, and they agreed, and they brought me over, and everybody has a simulator, so they have a simulator too, and you do some TDGs and stuff before you actually step up in the simulator. So a lot of stuff that really focuses on your thought process as a JTAC and being able to think not necessarily outside of doctrine, but outside of the box when it comes to employing doctrine in situations. Or being able to, as people say, it's a thinking man's game, think about stuff that is going to be applicable to the CAS that's maybe not necessarily what is the very basic thing to think about. That's kind of a roundabout way of talking about it, but being a thinking man, essentially. So you go over there and do some of those problems, and they really dive deep into your thought process as you're going through it. You have to have a reason for everything you do. If you do something, you can't just say, well, I don't know why I did it. There has to be a reason behind that. And then you step up to the simulator and you execute some controls in the simulator, and they assess your ability to control. And then also at the same time, it's your personalities getting assessed as well, because it's very personality based. You know what I mean? You're working on a small team with dudes that are very close and have been working together a long time a lot of times. Personality is a huge part of it.
What's the average team size?
It fluctuates between who you're with, but it's I didn't experience any teams that were more than 20. Generally less than that. So
yeah, that's what I figured about, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty small. Okay. Pretty small.
And so you went over. Did you find out immediately that you had been selected to come over and continue through their training, or did you have to sit there and wait a while, wondering what the hell happened?
Well, it's a funny story, and Top Training probably weigh in on it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to get selected initially. So I did the right things during the TDG. So there was a thing specifically involving the bomb fall line and me adjusting my final tactics in consideration of that was good. But so I was nervous, right? Like any screening process. So I threw a fat lip in, and while I was doing the TDG and stuff, no issue there. Well, Top Nickum was also dipping at the same time, and we had matching dip cups. And then when I went up to the simulator, I forgot to take my dip out. So I was up there on the simulator, and then Top Nickum grabbed my spitter while I was controlling, and I was like, "Hey, Top, that's my spitter." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "That's my spitter, Top." He's like, "No, that's my spitter." I'm like, "Top, your spitter's over there," and I pointed to his. It was, over on the wall or something. And so he gave me mine back. And then when we had left the screening, Jeff kind of chewed my ass for having a dip in while I was up there at the simulator, or Top Granny kind of chewed my ass for having a dip in while I was up there on the simulator. So I wasn't sure, what that was going to mean for my screening. So it took a little bit before I found that I'd actually passed and been selected, if you will.
Wouldn't that be horrible if you didn't get selected just because you were dipping inside the simulator?
So I think I never talked to Warren about this, but I feel like maybe he was kind of testing me on the whole personality aspect of, because sometimes as a JTAC on a team, like, you're the dude, right? You're the SME when it comes to everything, fires and casts. So sometimes you have to be able to assert yourself and assert your proficiency, not be disrespectful, but be able to tell somebody something when they do it. So I don't know. I kind of feel like in the back of my head, maybe he was testing me at that point. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I mean, obviously I was never over there with you guys or anything like that, but I had a similar kind of situations working on an advisor team. Like I said, there's no air officer, there's no other forward observers. I had no JFOs. I know sometimes the Raiders will have a couple guys that have gone to TCP school or have gone to SOTAC. But that's not their main job. Like recon, that's like one of 5 things that they've gone to learn. So it's, if he has to do it, he can, but it's not like someone you want to put on there if you don't have to. And I remember one time, we were on a rooftop in Sengen, and we had some guys. We had this area called we called it the Broccoli Head. It was this clump of trees across the river from a village, and the enemy would bring a little boat across the river and put shit in the tree line. And we knew they were storing weapons and stuff there, but 3-4's battalion commander would not let us clear anything on these dudes. So we were with the Afghans, we're Afghan advisors, so we would just go, "Hey, Afghans, we're going to shoot a mortar mission," and we just have them shoot their own mortars because we don't have to get approval for that. And my team leader was up on the rooftop with me. He was this major, good dude. He's not a bad guy. I don't dislike the guy. And he shot the first round and it impacted. And I'm up there like a good observer with my binos, like, "Oh, impact!" And and I'm doing the correction in my head. And I look down because I'm on the rooftop. I look down to yell down to the captain that's working with the Afghan mortar guys. And I hear my major go, "Kramer, add 800." And I'm like, "Add 800? Like, what the fuck's he talking about?" And I was like, "Add 400." And he's like, "Hey, I said add 800. And I'm like, I looked and I'm like, "Well, it's not going to hurt anything." I was like, "Add 800. And he fired. And while they're getting ready, he's like, "I know you're a forward observer, but mortars are different than artillery," and blah, blah. And he was trying to do this thing with me. And I'm like, "Okay, sir." And the rounds shot and were way long. He's like, "Oh, those are long." I was like, "Yeah, they look like they're about 400 meters long, sir. What do you think?" And he's just kind of looked at me like, he's like, okay, I'll let you do your thing.
Point taken.
I was like, all right. And that was no hurt feelings, nothing like that. It was like, "Hey, man, this is my job. You got your job. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. And you don't tell me how to do my job." And you're right. Sometimes you have to, put yourself out there and be like, "Look, this is my spot. I'm going to piss in this spot. This is my spot. Like, stay away from my spot, So then I've heard of guys going over to MARSOC and they butt heads with their teammates and they end up getting kicked out. They end up getting kicked off a team or even out of the unit back to the fleet because, like you said, personalities just don't come together. And in a unit like that, the missions are real. You're not getting like bullshit missions. This is SOCOM. So it's not like I don't know. So I can see how that can become an issue. Did you ever run into a time where you were like, you and your teammates would butt heads with each other about how something was going to be employed?
So not really. I mean, I was on the first team I was on. I wasn't on for deployment. I was just on there just with the team, filling the billet for some of their workup. And there was some points on that team where some of us didn't necessarily get along or it felt to me like maybe they didn't care for enablers that much. Mm-hmm. But that also might have been just because I was a fill-in for some training. I wasn't actually deploying with them. Oh. But outside of that, man, it went pretty well. Like most of the guys there, they understand why you're there. And as long as, again, you display that you're proficient in your job and you know your job, then generally you're not going to have any issues. Now, some guys are proficient at their job, but they come over there with like a chip on their shoulder or being really arrogant, and that's not going to jive well, man. Especially on a new team, that's just not going to jive.
Yeah.
That or honestly being out of shape over there is pretty much you got to be in some type of shape, because a lot of the missions you're doing out there are going to require a lot of stamina.
Yeah. I've heard guys that, you know, they told me, again, and I've never been over there, dudes are like, hey, it's all big boy rules, man. It's on you to go PT and do it. And the expectation is you come into work and you're ready to come to work. Like outside of that, you do whatever you want. They'll send you to whatever school you want, as long as you make the time for yourself to do it and you maintain everything else that you're required to maintain as an enabler in that unit. Is that kind of how it seemed while, you know, you were there?
Yeah, it's definitely big boy rules, man. And that's one of the things too, when you go over there, like there's nobody holding your hand. There's nobody telling you got to do this, you got to do that. It's on you, and that's why it requires, I think, a higher level of maturity to go over there and be successful and not get kicked off a team or not get kicked back to the fleet, because it is all on you to do everything. And especially when it comes to when you're on a team, and most of the time, you know, you have an air officer at the company, but generally you're not co-located a lot of the time, so it's all on you, everything. Whether it's CAS, you know, UAS, fires, anything that really flies through the air or has any type of fires effect on the battlefield, you're expected to be a SME in that. And part of that is being in your pubs on your own, studying that stuff, knowing everything, and then everything big Marine Corps wise, you still have to do all that stuff. So making sure that you're up on your training, you're doing your PFT, your CFT, all that kind of stuff. It's on you. Excuse me.
No, you're good. What was it like when you found out that you were going over there? They're like, hey, I got accepted. Now I got orders.
I was really excited, man, because obviously, you know, coming up as a kid and wanting to be in the military my whole life, being in some type of special operations environment, I'd always wanted to do that. And, you know, I told my wife, and they give you a brief on what to expect when you go over there. You know what I mean? You're going to be gone. Even when you're stateside, especially as a JTAC, you're gone, because the small time you have stateside, you got to get your currency. You got to keep your currency. So you're always gone training all over the country, doing different shoots and stuff. So I was super amped, and I knew it was going to be taxing on my wife and kids. So I talked to her about it, and she said, hey, this is something you've wanted to do for a long time. So I support you 100%. And I understand that it's temporary, because as an enabler, it's a 5-year gig. So it's not like I'm staying over there permanently. So super excited, but definitely expectations with the family is a very important part for anybody who wants to go over there. You got to understand that, man, because if you go over there and your family's not prepared, or you're not prepared to be separated from your family that long, you're going to have a bad time.
How many days a year do you think you were gone away from home, like percentage wise?
Oh man, it was with deployments, and it's over there. It's turn and burn. Like such a small JTAC pool there, you're constantly turning and burning. So I don't know, man. Like 80% of the year, like it seemed like most of the time I was gone.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
The times I was home was pre-deployment or post-deployment leave.
And then like you're worrying about what schools you want to go to, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So schools were it really depended. You know, everybody makes a whole big deal of jump school, but for me, it was never. It wasn't something I was interested in. One, some dudes just want to jump out of airplanes. Me, I prefer flying on them. You know, not big on jumping out of a perfectly good airplane.
I never got
but a lot
it.
of dudes go over there, and that's what they want. I had the opportunity. Top Crane gave me the opportunity, and I had already. My family was already coming out from Arkansas to come all the way out here to North Carolina to visit me. Like they'd already taken off work and made travel plans and stuff. So I told them that I wanted to see my family, and it wasn't a big deal for me. And especially since I wasn't on a team that required that, I declined the opportunity. And it doesn't bother me that happened. Now, were I on a team that was a requirement? Yeah, I would have told my family, sorry, like work comes first. But that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first got to Anglico, they offered me an opportunity. They're like, you can go, or we can send one of the other Marines, like one of the sergeants. And I'm like, dude, send them. Like, because at Anglico, you don't have a jump mission. You know, it's not written into the mission there anymore. Yep. So for those that don't know, a lot of guys at Anglico are jump qualified, but when they disbanded the active duty Anglicos, and then they brought them back because of the global war on terrorism, they didn't come back with their jump mission intact. So guys can still go to school, but when you do, you're not getting any jump pay or anything like that. And that's what I was looking at. I'm like, dude, I'm in my 30s. Like, I'm not trying to go jump out of a plane and get hurt, and I'm not even getting extra pay for it. And it's not even the pay's not even that great. It's like what, $150 a month or something, like something stupid.
My knees and back are already jacked up.
Yeah, like, so I'm the same way, man. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's cool and I'll go. Like, if you need me to go, I'll go. But if you don't need me to go, I'll definitely let one of the sergeants go instead of me, What kind of training did you do though when you first got over there? Like, what did they do that you could talk about that they spun you up to get you ready for team deployments?
I mean, so you have to go to, SEER just like anybody else who is, pilots, anybody that's in that position where there's the possibility they could, be behind enemy lines or anything like that. So you go to SEER, which is definitely some of the most phenomenal training I've ever done in the Marine Corps. Realistically, it's great. It sucks at the time, but looking back on it, man, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you go to a special operations training course, which just kind of teaches you how everything's different there than it is in the fleet. Nothing crazy, shoot, move, communicate, medicate, that kind of stuff.
Now, isn't that course the standard course for all enablers that are going to be attached to teams?
Yeah. It's part of the package. It's a requirement to be designated as a SOCS. So yeah, you do that, and then you do some level 1 stuff, which is just more proficiency in your MOS in that type of environment. And once you complete those 3 things, then you can start working.
What do you mean by level 1 stuff?
It's just more of the stuff that's relative to how fires are employed in that type of environment as opposed to a conventional environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
How
so
often,
it's just some of the intricacies of soft fires.
How was working with John Dillard?
It was amazing, man. John was a great dude, very intimidating dude, but also
for sure
very like what I mean. He's like the godfather of JTACs almost. And he was amazing to work with, and as long as you were good at your job, you know what I mean? It was phenomenal. Now, if you were bad at your job, you would know it when John was around.
Yeah.
He didn't split hairs. He didn't bullshit you. You know what I mean? If you were good at it, you were good at it. If you weren't, you weren't. And he worked diligently to make sure everybody was the best they could be over there. And I know he's missing the community over there. He was a phenomenal person to work with.
Yeah.
And intimidating, Rhino was his call sign for a reason. Huge dude, man. He's big, big, physically imposing individual, but one of the smartest guys when it came to fires I've ever met.
I got to meet John. I went to the MARSOC fires course. Tony Musselman was putting it together, and they sent me over there to just sit through the classes and stuff and go through it. And he came in and gave us some class, and I was one of the probably the classes I took with me through the rest of my career, and I'll remember it forever. Probably is his fratricide class, and it's super intense. You're listening because he had the comm and everything from everything that happened. And I'm not going to get into the details of the actual class and stuff like that, but it's super intense. Or just hearing it, like when you're hearing the comm piece from every the JTAC and the team, the members of the team and the pilot, and knowing what's going to happen. It left a huge mark in me, and that is why when I attached to my advisor team, because I attached to my advisor team like a month later, that's one of the reasons I was like, fuck, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I need to get in the pubs. That's why I said I was constantly reading the pubs. That class is one of the main reasons why I was like that, because, he instilled it in you, like, dude, this is your job. Like, you can't mess up. Like, that's just it. Don't mess up, because this is what happens. And I tried to carry on that kind of thinking and that thought process, and I tried to instill that in guys that I taught JFO and JTAC primers in the future. I actually took his class that he gave us. Obviously, his was classified, and he had certain things that he could do with it that I couldn't. But I took that event and stuff, and I turned it into my own little class, and I would give it to like the recon guys and the snipers and my own dudes and stuff while we were on ship. And that was probably one of my favorite classes to teach, because you could really see it in people's eyes if they took it seriously. Like, they finally realized, like, oh shit, like, because there was nothing worse for me than going out to an OP and seeing someone like doing a control. Like, maybe I got a JFO over here. And one time specifically, I remember walking up to an OP. It was another team that was out there shooting. So I just walked up while they're in the middle of a mission. And I was talking to the JFOs. One of them was working with the aircraft and doing the talk on and stuff like that. And they had skids come in, and this is at Camp Pendleton, and the skid started shooting. And I'm like, hey, is that your target? And he's like, no, sir, or no, staff sergeant. And I'm like, then fucking tell him to stop. I'm like, why are you just letting him continue to shoot the wrong target, man? I'm like, look, guy, I'm like, dude, I'm like, you guys, this isn't, I know you're looking at this like I'm sitting on the OP, I got my monster in my hand and I'm doing a control. I was like, but you got to look at this like it's real life. I was like, if that wasn't your target, you just fucking wasted a building that wasn't the right target. And that has real world ramifications. You know, that can change the ROEs, you know, the rules of engagement in a combat zone. You can literally change the shape of a battlefield because of a bad decision that you make. One bad bomb on a wedding party or something like that. And, you know, you're on national news and you're maybe go to jail because you fucked up. You know, you're going to get investigated and stuff. And
our tactical level decisions or faults or successes have strategic level implications. It's just the nature of our job, man. It's crucial.
Yeah, it's hard for young guys that haven't deployed yet or haven't seen the real world effects of ordnance to understand that, you know. And I mean, the only way that I could push that is to, you know, teach that fratricide class and bring out real world examples like the Apaches hitting the APC during the invasion. I think it was in the Gulf War, or like the A-10s, you know, hitting the track in Nasiriyah, you know, and stuff like that. And that's, you have to learn from the past. And some guys, like I said, they can't understand it until you give them like a good scenario or real world example of what happens. And John Dillard's class did that for me, man. It literally changed how I looked at how I was employing ordnance, because I was like, holy shit, like I need to understand fully the full picture of what's happening. I can't just wing it and be like, yeah, it's probably going to be okay. Cause you know, that's just not it. But anyway, so yeah, I knew you knew John. I know everybody who was over there knows John, and I knew, I know, like you said, he was missing the community. I didn't know him obviously as well as you guys did. I only met him briefly, but he did have an impact on just me, just, you know, his aura, you know, of being a professional. He's one of those dudes. It's like, if I'm talking to this guy, I better know what the hell I'm talking about. And because he's like a walking pub. He wrote some of the pubs, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so don't fuck around, because he's going to call you on your bullshit. And
yeah, he is.
And that's going to make you feel like a real asshole when the dude calls you out in front of other people.
Yep. And there's no behind closed doors debriefs. There's no whispered debriefs. Like when you control and debrief over there, even if you're not getting evaluated or doing a stand check or anything like that, you're getting debriefed in front of everybody. Everybody's learning from those mistakes that you're making. You can't hide. There's no hiding.
Exactly. Yeah. And
if you're bad, people are going to know.
That's how we did it at Anglico too. It's like, hey man, we all coming together and we're breaking down your mission, you know, in front of everybody. This is what you said. You should have said this. This is what you did. You should have done this. You know, you did this correct. You did, you know, and, sometimes people can't take that. You know, you got to put your big boy pants on and be ready to have some thick skin, because we're not perfect and we all mess stuff up, you know? Yep. And prime example, you were there at BT-11 out on the island when I was doing a control with a F-18, and it was a night control. It was supposed to be guns, and the pilot was a new pilot. He came around and he came around, and the first time he was supposed to attack, he aborted, and I was like, what'd you abort for? And he said he forgot to take his weapon off safe, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy. And then the next time he came around, you know, and it was a night control, like I said, and I was using IR pointer, so you had to get the visual tally call, so visual friendlies, contact the mark or tally the target or whatever. And he came, and this is like his third pass because they kept messing it up. And he came around and he was like, tally friendlies, you know, contact or visual the target or something like that. And I was like, cleared hot. And Tabby, who was the air officer, was like, fuck, abort. What the fuck are you doing? And just started yelling at me. And I'm like, oh shit. And dude, I felt like such a piece of shit. And I know you remember, I'm sure you remember that incident when it happened. I literally thought about that for months. Yep. I would go back and be like, damn it, why did I do that? I'm an idiot, you know? But I think that's the kind of mentality you have to be good at that job, because you have to look at the little things and be like, they matter. You can't be like, oh, the little things don't matter. Just let it go. Like little things like that matter. And the rules of being a JTAC are written in blood, you know, like there's a reason why things are done the way they're done.
And I think definitely. I 100% agree with that. It's very important. And if you try and just overlook the little things, then they're going to compound into big things. And I'm my own worst critic, man. I can get a debrief and I'll beat myself up a million times more than the guy who debriefed me. And my thought process has always been like this: I get nervous before every time I get on the hooks.
Yep.
Now, as soon as I key the hook, it's all the nervousness dissipates, right? It's game time. But I feel like if I get to the point where, one, I don't get nervous about this job before I control, and two, at the end, I don't beat myself up about things I mess up. When I get to that point, I shouldn't be doing this anymore because I don't care enough.
For sure.
And that's, to me, that's it. If I ever get to that point, then I'm done doing the JTAC thing because that's dangerous.
Yeah, when I was a team chief at Anglico, it was like I would do a control, and even as a senior dude over there, I'd be like, all right, what do I do? Like, come on, guys, like sergeants. Like, don't fucking hold back, man. Like, if I mess something up, like, tell me, because, you know, that's how we learn. You know, don't be afraid. You can't be the gray man where you just hide in the back and you never, you never actually do the work. You just, because when the time that you get called up and have to do it and no one's ever corrected you, or you never put yourself out there to fail in training, it's just going to hurt you in the end. How did the JTAC training differ from like what you did at 10th Marines, compared to like what you did over at MARSOC?
Well, so going over there, man, so you know how it is at 10th Marines generally. You know, a lot of the time it's just you get handed a section from the air officer, you do a 9-line, you know, and then the next guy takes a section. Generally, you know, the OP cast one because of the limited assets and the amount of dudes we have to get through. Like, it's just the nature of it. But when I went over there, it was literally just me. So assault support, soup to nuts, assault support, raid, CAS, IDF, everything. So it was eye-opening not having an air officer to do all the planning or doing any of that stuff. It was only me. And I don't even think that I had seen the assault support TAC SOP.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Before I went over there. And then I'm no shit, like you said, getting in the pubs, studying, reading, trying to learn everything I can about this because I've never had to do it before.
Yeah.
And now I've got to do everything soup to nuts, 100%. With, you know, every now and then, you know, you'll have an air officer, but 90% of the time, man, it's you doing it. So that's a huge difference between the fleet and going over there. And that's what I tell a lot of dudes. You know, dudes approach me knowing my background and they want to go over there. So they want to talk to me, and I'll sit them down and talk to them about it. And that's one of the things I tell them, man. There's a million things that are expected out of you there that aren't necessarily expected in the fleet.
And so for those, I think we already said it, but so the standard is 5 years as a support guy over at MARSOC. How many deployments did you do in that time frame?
So I did 3. I was scheduled for 4. One of them didn't happen, but so I ended up doing 3 total.
Okay. Can you talk about any of those, or?
I mean, not specifically, just that I did 3 in the 5 years I was over there, and that you know, it was both rewarding, fulfilling, and a great experience. And the personnel that I worked with on those deployments, the level of proficiency that I was surrounded by was phenomenal. That made the transition a little difficult. So.
Yeah, I bet, man. Being around people that want to be there is completely different than being at a regular unit where dudes are just, you know, trying to skate out of work and stuff like that, or trying to do as little as possible to get, you know, so they can get home. Working with like high level dudes, it's super rewarding, and it's like, you know, the cheesy phrase like steel sharpens steel. You know, being around other people that are really proficient just drives you to become more proficient on your own, because you don't want to, you know, fail in front of your peers and let these dudes down. So what kind of training did you bring from, you know, MARSOC back to 10th Marines that you tried to implement with the guys that you work with as JTACs and JFOs?
So coming back here, I came back to the fleet and I went straight to ATS and started teaching the primers, which have changed a lot since we were there the first time.
Yeah.
It's substantially different now with the TNR, but it's one man. It was just me. So I'm the only dude over there doing it all. So maybe implementing things, I couldn't do as much. I was able to bring a lot of the experience that I had and some of the maturity that I gained and growth over there, and kind of push that knowledge on to the guys that were coming through my class there. So really, really driving home some of the importance of things. Like you talked about that fratricide class, really being able to drive that home to those dudes, the importance of being good at this job. And talking to them about that, and then talking about some of my experiences, I think was definitely valuable. I will say, you know, they say you're going to come back and push all this knowledge to the fleet, but it's not really like that. Like I came back and I didn't know, like there was no TNR when I left. We didn't use McTims, none of that. So I came back, and the biggest learning curve for me was trying to, get in the TNR, figure out what all that stuff was, figure out how to track all my currency and controls in McTims, because I never used McTims. So it was a big learning process, but I think just my knowledge and some of the maturity and experience was what I was able to bring back the most. Yeah. Especially in the seat that I got put in when I first got back at the schoolhouse there.
Okay. Yeah. McTims became like a thing. I think I was getting ready to punch out on my second MEU, and that's when they were like, hey, we're using McTims, and you got to upload all your controls to this system. And it was still like it was a pain in the ass. It was I don't know how it is now, but it was like we were working through so many issues. You had to maintain your IPR and McTims now, because McTims was like, still up and coming, I guess. But I know they were trying to like make it kind of more like the Air Force, how they track their dudes, and I could see it being efficient that way. But I was there for the learning pain, so I didn't really get much out of it. I think I disagree with bringing dudes back after 5 years. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like once you're in a unit like that, just like I disagree with and I don't know if it's still like that, but before it was like, hey, you're going to do one enlistment basically, or 3 years as a JTAC, and then, hey, you're going to go be a fires chief. Like, you did your JTAC time, now it's time to be a fires chief. And I disagree with that, and I disagree with bringing dudes back after they did their 5 years, because I feel like at that point, that's when you've got the most knowledge. Like, you actually understand it, A new JTAC, like you said, coming out of schoolhouse, you don't know everything. You know the baseline. You understand the concept, but you don't know how to, necessarily, or you understand the theory, but doing it in practice is different. And at 3 years in the fleet as a JTAC, you learn so much. And to pull a guy like that and go, okay, well, now it's time to go be a recruiter. It's like, I don't know. I don't know why we do it to ourselves, where we drain our own knowledge. I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts on that, or if you want to expand on that at all.
So, man, the 5 year thing, like, I kind of get it, big picture wise. I'm not a huge political person, right? I never have been, never been big in a lot of the political stuff. So I get it from an aspect, but from what you said is a big thing, right? So, and I feel for the team guys sometimes, because with that 5 years and the rotations and everything, I feel like at least me, like, it was probably 3 years before I had, like, not 100%, but a really firm grasp on, like, the team dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. Who the different dudes in the team were, what they did, what was expected of you exactly. Kind of really figured everything out. And by the time I figured everything out, I did like one more deployment as a really seasoned dude on the team. Like, I pretty much, it was the same dynamic as if I were like one of the element leaders, right? It wasn't a lot different. I was treated like one of the more senior dudes on the team because I had the experience.
Yeah.
And about the time you get there, you got to go back to the fleet. And now the teams are getting these brand new dudes that they have to teach everything again about the team dynamic and whatnot. I know it must be difficult on those dudes. And for me, I do see the perspective of, yeah, you get everything figured out and then you go back to the fleet. Now for me on a personal level, I did not want to stay longer. I know some dudes do. And it's not that I didn't love it over there. I did love it. Selfishly, I wanted to stay there. But end state, it was my family. I had 2 kids while I was there.
Yeah.
Didn't know them. You know what I mean? Because I was never here. My old lady was just wore out. 5 years of your husband never being home, it tires you out. So by the time I hit 5 years, you know what I mean? It was best decision for me to make for my family was to leave and come back here. Yeah, I'm, selfishly, I'd love to keep doing the cool guy shit and the big boy rules, but I'd focus on my family, and that's really what brought me back to the fleet.
No, that makes sense, man. And I imagine the divorce rate over there is quite high with the amount of time that people are gone. It is definitely, it's already hard enough on families because just being a regular JTAC or a regular forward observer, you're going to the field constantly, you're going to train constantly and stuff like that. And with the, an increased amount of training and stuff that you have to do over there, I can see how that can be super hard on a family. So, I get it, I don't know. What was it like when you had to check out though? Like, did you like, fuck, man, I can't believe I'm leaving?
I'll be honest with you, man. The transition is one of the hardest things I've had to do. It's been tough, man. Leaving there and just the level of proficiency you guys you're surrounded with, the level of responsibility, the level of maturity around you, and then coming back to the fleet that honestly, I left the fleet as a sergeant and I came back as a gunny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's also a substantial difference in responsibilities and things that I'm expected to do or know, and mainly on the administrative side.
Yeah.
That I didn't really have to do. I didn't have Marines. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And now I have, 40 Marines
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in the Division FSEC now. So it was a very hard transition that way, and as well as mentally for me, coming back from being on the go 24/7, just go, 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 nonstop, constantly busy, constantly operational, constantly doing shit, and then coming back here and just everything stops. I went to ATS, and the idea is that you get a break, right, from the tempo when you go. They put you somewhere where you can have a little bit of a break,
Mm-hmm.
and I greatly appreciate that. It was definitely needed, but it's hard to go from 100 miles an hour to a dead stop.
Yeah.
And then, anything you're dealing with, like for example, mental stuff, it's easy to kind of compartmentalize it and push it back in the back because you're constantly going. You're going, 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 going. Then you come back to the fleet and stop, and all this shit that you've been able to kind of bottle up and push out of the way all of a sudden now comes to the forefront, and that's also difficult to deal with. So it's a tough transition, man. I'll be honest.
Yeah, the mental health, man. Mental health in all aspects of the military is something that guys have. I mean, obviously, everybody's different. Everybody reacts to stressors differently. Everybody reacts to training differently. Everybody reacts to combat differently. Someone getting killed. All these things. I don't know. We could talk mental health for days probably because it's just such a thing that it's a very individual thing the way I look at it. And the problem with mental health is that we have all these programs and these services and stuff like that, but it doesn't matter if the first step isn't taken, and that's the person like reaching out and going, "Hey man, I need some help," And I think that's our biggest issue is guys, saying it like, "Hey, I need to go talk to somebody," and maybe that's just all they need to do is just vent. It's a real struggle, and I don't know. I remember we came back from my 3/6 deployment. One of my scouts, he got into some crazy stuff while he was there, and he came up to me after the deployment. He was basically crying. And he's just like, "Man, Sergeant, I can't sleep. Something's wrong." And I was like, "All right, man, let's go talk to chaps. Let's go do this." And I've always heard people say that people get shunned for having, asking for help and stuff like that. And I never really saw that. And I really felt like I was glad that he respected me enough and trusted me enough to come up to me and tell me like, "Hey man, I'm having problems." And I think that was like, I don't know. I thought that was huge that he had that faith in me, and I'm glad he did it. I'm assuming he's doing fine now. I talked to him not too long ago. He's out of the Marine Corps now, and I know he's working and stuff like that. So, but I don't know, man. Mental health. It's just like I said. It's It's a huge individual thing.
And it was tough coming back and having to address some of that stuff, especially the stigma behind it and all that. That and I was raised in a very traditional, Southern household, men tough, you don't really cry or show emotion or anything like that. So it was really tough to finally identify and make that step. And it really took my home life kind of being affected by it for me to look in the mirror, realize that I needed something and to go talk to somebody. And I would definitely encourage anybody who's having any type of mental health issues or think they may be to not be held back by anything, man, and go out there and talk to somebody and get that help, because it helped me night and day, especially during that difficult time of a transition when it was rearing its head. It could have went a lot worse than it did, but my family being part of the strength that helped me identify it and actually say, "Hey, I need some help," and go talk to somebody. It's yeah, man, it's definitely helpful, and I really encourage anybody who's struggling with that to do it. There's a lot of things out there to help you.
Did you go talk to somebody like on the books? Did your chain of command know, or was that something you did? Because I know there's a lot of ways to do it anonymously too.
There are. So I did initially. I went and talked to the MO about it for a bit to talk to him, but there's a couple different routes, right? There's two different ways that you should attack it. The way it was explained to me is one is medicine helps, but two is talking to somebody, whether that's therapy or however you want to do that. So I went to the MO and talked to him, but my actual other stuff that I do is off the books, and there's a lot of organizations out there that you can talk to that aren't directly linked to the DoD. And you know what I mean? You can talk to them without fear of reprisal or the implications of losing your job or your career or anything like that, and you can just be completely open with them and not have to be scared. There's a lot of avenues for that. And if anybody wants any advice on that, I'm always available if they want to ask. But yeah, I went and talked to some people, and that helped out a lot. Also talking to people who've dealt with the same thing I have, peer-to-peer talk a lot as well.
And, I think that you keep saying, you're like, I went and talked to this person, went to talk. That's really it. You just need someone to talk to. Like, people need to have someone that they feel like they can trust, that they can talk to, and like let this stuff out. And it's hard to, I think for some people, it's really hard to open up to people because you don't think they're going to understand, or you're going to get some kind of judgment that, like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You're supposed to be a Marine. You're supposed to be, you came from MARSOC. You're supposed to be this MARSOC dude, like.
Exactly. That's the stigma.
Yeah. But I think it's self-induced. I don't think it's necessarily institutionally like that as much as people say it is. I think it's mostly self-induced stigma where you think that you're too good for that. I shouldn't be having this problem, so I'm not going to go talk to somebody. Yeah, man. So before I shift gears, do you want to kind of just go over maybe a couple things that people that might be looking to go and screen, like what they should do to prepare, or what, I don't know, any kind of advice that you would give somebody that might be looking at going over to MARSOC fires?
Yeah, man. I mean, some of the biggest things is physical preparation is huge, right? You got to be in good shape to be able to keep up with those dudes because they're all in phenomenal shape. And physicality is a large aspect of the job, but also being very, very proficient in the job, right? Not just going out and doing a 9-line on the OP. Mm-hmm. Really push yourself to get put into very tactical, dynamic situations where you're controlling aircraft. Very dynamic situations, because that's what you're going to be doing, and get used to more than one aircraft, right? Get used to having multiple aircraft in a stack, being on the move, being dynamic, having multiple targets, moving targets. You just have to make your training as realistic and dynamic as you can to be prepared to go over there. Yeah. But you also have to be able to think about things, second and third order effects. And like everybody says, the thinking man's game, it really is, especially over there. And the more you can come over there, being able to have a thought process outside of line 1, line 2, line 3, it's going to help you. Yeah. Being able to do that and being flexible. And then another, one of the biggest things, if you have a family, man, prepare them. Prepare your family and prepare yourself because it's going to be difficult for them. Yeah.
I think going over to Anglico for me was a great, opened my eyes to the amount of training that you can do. That you just don't know about that, because everyone gets in that mentality like, all right, we're going to the hill, we scheduled this training area, grab this stuff, all right, we're out here, all right, now it's time to go home. And I don't know, I figured out how to schedule my own ranges. I found out that like you can just schedule a range. Like, oh, what, you can just schedule a range? Like, I didn't know.
I could just call the squadrons.
Yeah, exactly. That was the other thing. Yeah. Having so many pilots at Anglico, because every team has multiple pilots on it, opened up so many avenues for us to be like, hey, do you guys need support for this? Or they would call us. They'd be like, they knew their buddy was there. Like, hey, can you send someone out to Yuma to do like 2 days of cast for this? Like on Thursday? Like, sure. Yeah, I got a guy. And Anglico was cool enough where they'd be like, hey, do you want to go? Yeah. Okay. Here's hurry up and do your funding stuff. And here's your hotel or whatever. Here's where you're staying. Go out there and do it. And, yeah, man, like thinking outside the box and thinking outside the normal standard training that Big Marine Corps gives you is for sure like the way to go, because that's how it is in combat. Like, it's not sitting on the OP and going, okay, this is me. It's controlling from vehicles, controlling on the move, controlling in dynamic areas where you have, like you said, multiple sections on station. Maybe you have rotary wing and fixed wing, and maybe you got like some kind of intelligence bird or something like that. All these different things that you don't really think about that you shouldn't be first exposed to in a combat zone. So I guess it's good that someone like you comes back from like MARSOC and you can bring that kind of knowledge base over to teach that to other guys, because that was definitely something I didn't feel like I didn't know that. I didn't understand that as a JTAC at 10th Marines. When I got to Anglico is when I those doors and those understandings of those things kind of opened up for me, because I was like, oh shit, like here's all the stuff that we can do and we can actually go out and practice it, And it helped being at Camp Pendleton and the West Coast, where the training areas are way better. What training areas did you guys use out there? Because I know you guys use a lot of different ones.
All over the place, man. We went to ranges all over the country. Really, anywhere you could think of a range, we probably went out there and trained at it with all different types of aircraft, all different squadrons, all different services. It's a joint environment, so you're training with everybody that you could possibly think of. And it's the traveling is amazing over there. Like if you want to travel, man, I tell you what, when you get over there, you get to do a lot of traveling, and it's amazing. Some of the places I got to go and see is amazing. Like it's well worth it.
Oh
it's
yeah,
well worth it.
I remember. That just reminded me of a couple of your Facebook posts of.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Okay. I'm not gonna mention anything, but I know some of you did get to go see some cool stuff.
Yeah, we got to go see some sights and stuff. Like nothing crazy. Like got to go to Petra, which was cool. You know, and like you get to see some stuff that you would otherwise never see, like in the world. It's you would never get to travel to those places, and you're not paying to travel there with anything other than your time.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
So
that's one thing I miss about the military is the travel, for sure. That's why I'm hoping to secure a job. My goal would be to get paid to make documentaries, to travel around.
Oh, dude, that'd be awesome.
That's kind of what I'm working towards. You know, that's kind of what I'm pushing for. Because I just like to travel and see stuff. And what you're going to find, dude, when you get out is you can't talk to people because you feel like an asshole. Because every time they say something about some place, you're like, oh, yeah, I've been there. Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Like, oh, yeah. You know, I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been to Hong Kong 5 times. You know, they're like, what? Like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, you should go to this place. You know, this is the hotel you should stay in. You know, and when it's all civilians and you, like I said, you kind of start feeling like you just don't want to talk about it because you become that guy, you know, you're like the one-up guy.
Yeah.
And so that's something just to look forward to, you know, when you get out. So something to think about. I like doing these podcasts because I can talk to guys and you get it, you know, you understand. I'm lucky Michael Farrell lives right down the road. My buddy, he was over at Anglico. He was in Okie and stuff like that as well. And we can talk about shit. And he's the same way. He's like, dude, I can't talk to anybody because I just feel like an asshole, you know, because I've got to do all this cool stuff that, like, in just one of the trips I've ever gotten to do would be something great for the average person, you know. And I've gotten to do these things so many times that it's just crazy. And yeah, it's kind of weird.
I get that feeling here. Right now, because coming back from over there, my most recent experiences for the past almost 6 years were over there. So a lot of times when I'm relaying experiences or trips, I'm like, oh, when I was at this place, when I was at MARSOC, or when I was with MRB, and then everybody's like, yeah, we get it, you're a MARSOC. I was like, yeah, I know, I'm not trying to be an asshole. That's just all my experiences for the past almost 6 years. So,
yeah, well, now wait until you're out and people haven't done anything. They've never left their hometown. You know, I'm from Indiana. People in Indiana, and no hate on, my friends and family in Indiana, but people, it's like they work all year to do their one family trip on spring break to Florida and then come home and get back to work, and it's like, I don't know. I have one cousin that lives in Italy. She was on the show the other day talking about the coronavirus and what was going on over there. Yeah. And her and one of my other cousins are like the only ones that travel or have traveled and seen stuff. And I'm like, I just tell them, like, I really wish more of the family, just more of everybody could get out and see stuff, get out and see the world and even the country. Like, driving through the United States is such a trip if you've never done it. It's, I mean, I love Utah. That's that's like one of my favorite places to go. I might go out there and go camp next week because BLM land is still open for camping for people that don't know that.
And I'll tell you, man, seeing other parts of the world that don't have it as well off as we do here really opens your eyes to how good we have it in this country, honestly. It really is mind-blowing how some of the other countries are, and it helps you appreciate the little things a lot more.
It helps you appreciate the little things, and it really pisses you off when people take it or don't take advantage of it, but don't appreciate it themselves. You're like, dude, if you only knew, man. I tried to relay seeing the refugee camp in Djibouti, to people. It's like, dude, these are Ethiopians that are refugees. They're living in Djibouti because there's like a war going on in their country. They're starving. They're living in corrugated steel huts, and it's 100 and whatever degrees outside. Like, they're baking, it's just, they'll get in fights over bottles of water and stuff like that. It's just like it's a totally different, I don't know. It's like I said, man, it makes you really appreciate stuff. And it's why most stuff, if I get a little bit of, I don't know, pushback or whatever you want to call it from just living day to day, it's like, whatever, man, like, it could always be worse,
Yep.
And I think guys like you and me and stuff like that, that's why we look at this coronavirus and being locked down or whatever, and just how people are freaking out. It's like, dude, calm down. Like, we can still go to the grocery store and buy food,
Wait, do you have running water and food and lights in your house and a roof? Like, it'll pass.
our definition of hard times and of who or what like poor is in the United States is so like skewed compared to the rest of the world. It's just I've talked about it before. There's this Chinese dude. It's on Netflix. He did a comedy special called Asian Destroys America or something like that. And he's like, dude, you guys live in the NBA. You have everything. You have so much, like so much of everything. You don't even realize it. He's like, Americans don't realize how good they have it. And I'm like, yeah, he's right, dude. Like that's 100% true. It's just, yeah. So let's talk about your new motorcycle, bro.
Oh yeah, you like that?
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell everybody what you just got?
Oh, I got a new 2020 Indian Challenger.
How do you like that?
I'm loving it now. I just got it out of the shop. Got the aftermarket pipes and bars and whatnot put on it. It's man, that thing rips. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. What were you riding before?
Oh, I still have it. I have a '07 Dyna Lowrider, Harley Davidson in my garage. I got that from my dad a while back, and it's I still love it. I'm not switching brands or anything. I love both of them. The stuff on the Indian's amazing, and I love my Dyna. But now I can take the Dyna and show my son how to work on it, and eventually pass it down to him, keep it in the family.
Which one rides better?
Well, the Indian's a lot more comfortable because it's a big old bagger, so it's good for long hauls. But if you're just ripping around town, man, that Dyna's fun. You can't beat it.
That thing looks huge on you. Like I saw a picture of you sitting on that Indian. Yeah. I'm like, Jesus, that is a huge bike.
It's over 800 pounds, man.
Oh, Jesus, dude. That's crazy.
It don't feel like it, though. Once you get it going, man, she feels similar to the Dyna. Obviously a little bit heavier coming into corners, but maneuvering her, man, once you get her going, she feels real light.
Is it pretty quick?
Oh, yeah. It's got 122 horsepower, 128 foot-pounds from the factory. So it's faster than most things from the factory on two wheels that are cruisers, not sport bikes, but cruisers.
Yeah. What all did you already add to it?
So I put some handlebars on it. I put a stage 1 intake. I put some exhaust, some crash bars, and I upgraded the navigation unit.
Navigation unit on your motorcycle.
Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy to me. Before I didn't have anything like that. I'd have one of my brothers next to me, like, "Hey, can you pull up your nav so I can know where we're going?" Sometimes,
That's funny.
If it's a strange place.
Yeah. Did you sell your car to get that, or do you still
I did.
Okay.
So I built that Scion. You're familiar with that because you're a car guy. So I built that Scion pretty much from stock up to a turboed Scion and everything. And the agreement, me and the wife made, she handles most of the finances, was if I sold the car and then bought another vehicle cash money, then I could finance a new motorcycle. So that's the deal we made. So I went through with it, and initially I was really sad when I sold the car because I built it, but once I got on the motorcycle, that kind of faded away.
Yeah. What all did you have done to your FRS?
So I had a SPD turbo kit in it, running 10 pounds off the wastegate. I had clutch, flywheel, catch cans, all the little associated small stuff that goes with putting a turbo kit in a car and having it be reliable. Remote tune with Visconti through ECU Tech. Just a bunch of little bits. I don't remember all of it.
Yeah. I know some of the people are going to hate on us, race burners, some of us that like those, but whatever, dude. Yeah. I love my Evo when I had it. I was talking to my kid today about it. Man. It was nice. I sold it, though. Now I'm driving a Jeep,
Yeah, I'm driving a Saab SUV now, so it's pretty lame. But
what are you going to do?
It's nice inside. It's got leather and, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Good cash price for 84,000 miles on the Odo.
Nice. Yeah, man, cars are great. Like cars, bikes, stuff like that, mechanical stuff. Like if you're into that, that's such a great relief to like.
Oh yeah,
it's like therapy. You're out here turning wrenches on the car, you're cussing at it because you busted your knuckles on a whatever.
Where's the damn 10 millimeter at? You can't find it anywhere.
Never. It's not here. That's where it's at.
Nope, it's gone.
Your boys come over and you're working on a car with one of your homies. Like that's such good times. Yeah, if people don't do it, man, I didn't like being a mechanic in the Marine Corps, but it did give me some skills that have saved me thousands and thousands of dollars. I put probably almost 10 grand in parts on my Evo, and none of that was labor. That was all just parts because I did it all. I had one of my buddies, Wasson. He helped me do a lot of the stuff at first, and yeah, man, just working on a car is such a good time. What's your future plans for your bike?
So eventually gonna get it's new. 2020 is the first year they released this model, so they're still working on a lot of the aftermarket. So A cat delete on the exhaust, a tuner, maybe some cams. We'll see. But yeah, I put pretty much everything on it that I wanted on it from the get-go for a while. But I know eventually I'll get hungry for some more power adders.
You got to, right?
Yeah, it's just in my blood too, man. I love building stuff. I love working on stuff, just as much as I love riding it.
Yeah, it's different having a Jeep, because now I'm like, man, like, there's no performance. I'm not gonna do performance stuff to it because it's a fucking Jeep. Like, I'm not getting anything out of it. Gas mileage is horrible. You don't really want to make it faster because I don't know if it can handle it. It feels like a spaceship taking
right.
off. I was driving. I'm so used to driving it. After I bought it, I drove cross country and back in it over the summer. I don't know if you followed me on Facebook when I was doing it. I spent 3 weeks on the road in it though. And I got so used to it, you don't think about it. It's kind of a rough ride. I put one of my buddy jumped in it, Michael Farrell jumped in it, and we were going down the freeway, and I was going like 80 in it. And I think for regular people, it's just like he was like holding on to the door, and I'm just like,
entering the atmosphere.
It just felt smooth to me. They're like, "This is your ride, huh? This is how you roll." And so for me, like the work I want to do it's different. Like maybe some suspension stuff. Maybe it's like I'm gonna get a rack for it. I'm looking at racks and stuff rather than like intakes and completely different. But it's cool because I've been getting into the outdoors a lot, camping and stuff. Like I said. The weather's nice. Next week I might go out to Utah and do some camping out there, but it's good for it. It's good for off-roading and stuff. I recommend it for anybody that I always wanted one. And when I bought my Evo, I initially I went online and there was no Evos in town. And, I was like, well, let's just go drive around. And if I can't find a car to buy, I'll just get a Jeep, cause it was like one of those, it's a cool car to have, but the Evo was there. So I got that. All right, man. Well, we're just over 2 hours. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we end this?
I mean, I don't think so off the top of my head. I really appreciate you having me on. And like I said, man, if anybody's trying to go that route, I hope they take some of the advice on board here. And I'm always accessible if anybody ever wants to talk. Like I said, I've got the knowledge and stuff. If they need some help or some advice for going over there, man, I'm always here they can bend my ear anytime they want.
You're on Instagram, right?
I don't really use Instagram much. Mostly just Facebook.
Yeah.
My old lady, she's a physical trainer. She has an Instagram. She's big on it, but I don't use it too much. I do on occasion. Okay.
Well, if there's any social media or anything you want to put out there, or if there's any kind of organizations or anything that you want to, say thanks for helping me out or whatever, this is your time to promote them, dude.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't mind speaking about the motorcycle club I'm in and some of the work we do, if that's all right.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, man. So I'm in the Forgotten Sons Motorcycle Club. We're a national motorcycle club that raises awareness and money for veterans organizations. We've done multiple things here in our area for Pets for Vets. We work with the Sergeant Eugene Ashley Veterans Shelter down in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's a homeless veterans shelter that takes veterans off the streets and gives them transitional housing and feeds them and that kind of stuff. So we do a lot of work with veterans, and we're looking at doing some work with the Semper Fi Fund here. And whenever some of this lockdown stuff's lifted and we can have some people together, we're going to have a get together for the Semper Fi Fund. So we just do a lot of stuff for veterans nationwide, and we've got chapters across the nation. So if you see any of the Forgotten Sons there, we're doing the Lord's work for veterans, and that's what we love, and that's what we're about. That's awesome, dude. I always hear Semper Fi Fund always comes up from people that. I don't know. Semper Fi Fund always seems like one of the best organizations that really seems like they do good work for veterans and stuff, and give almost all their donations to them go back into the community and is given back. And it's like, I don't know. Every time I hear about an event, it always seems like Semper Fi Fund is involved in that. So whenever you get your annual, hey, you guys want to donate to a charity thing, I would say check out Semper Fi Fund probably, Yeah, man, definitely. If someone wants to maybe try to get into the Forgotten Sons, what's the route for that? Well, let's get on your motorcycle and ride around and meet some Forgotten Sons and say what's up. Just kind of run into one, huh? Yeah, I mean we have a Facebook page, my chapter. It's Support Forgotten Sons MC Surf City. That's our specific chapter. So Support Forgotten Sons MC Surf City is Facebook, and then we also have a website, ForgottenSonsMC.com. That is still under construction, but it's a work in progress. But if you ever want to get into contact with us, yeah, you can look us up on Facebook and shoot us a message. Awesome, man. Well, hey, dude, it's been good catching up. It's been years. I know we BS back and forth on Facebook occasionally, but
I know we haven't sat down and bullshitted in like a long time. So,
I know, man.
keep up the good work in the Marine Corps, man. Spread the knowledge. You know, I know you're a good dude. I know you're a knowledgeable dude. Even before you went to MARSOC, you were like a no bullshit kind of guy, which I appreciated. You know, you came to work. You know, that's what you were there to do. And I felt like when we were teaching guys at ATS and stuff, like, you know, you cared about it, and that's the best you can ask for a guy that's, you know, sharing the knowledge and molding, you know, Marines, is to just care about them and care about the mission that they're going to go do. So you were always a consummate professional, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on the show and telling us your story. And for everybody else that's out there, if you want to hit me up, if you want to get in contact with Josh and you don't know how to get a hold of him, hit me up on my Instagram. It's jkramergraphics.com or jkramergraphics on Instagram. My website's jkramergraphics.com. And yeah, that's about it. So everyone have a good one.
It's been a real pleasure, man. I really appreciate it. And we got to stay in touch more.
For sure, dude. All right.
All right.